Zipper Lamb. All right, so let's call the meeting to order and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome everybody. Nice to see everybody out there.
Bless you.
All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Director Thomas,
I'm here.
Director Underhill, Director Ratterman,
Here.
President Cicada,
Here.
and Director Davidson should be on his way.
Yes. All right, moving on to public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Do I have any public comment here in the office? The building? No. Any online? All right, seeing none, let's move on to 3, the consent agenda. Now I'm moving kind of fast here. I'm hoping when Jeff gets here, we'll say, we're done. Anyhow, all right, item number 3, consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. Items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussion. I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second, and because the rest will need to do roll call. Thank you.
Okay, Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
President Cicada.
Yes. All right, Michael, do we need to move anything up? What about 5E? So before we got started, Michael asked if we could move item 5E to before item 4, so I'd like to do that now. So Jessica, hi there. A discussion action regarding the adoption of transaction fees for utility payments.
Good afternoon. So thank you for moving this item up, as this item dovetails closely with the budget. So we wanted to talk about this one first. So just a little review of the history with transaction fees. Back in 2004, the district did adopt transaction fees for credit card payments. But in 2008, I believe Director Underhill was here and Jeff was also here. We rescinded that due to
For good reason.
Right.
Back in 2000.
due to the recession.
Remember?
Due to both the recession and then the fact that just a small portion of our customers were utilizing credit card payments, and it wouldn't be a financial hardship in the district. So since then, technology's changed. Payment methods have changed. A lot has changed in the past 14 years. And now we have more customers utilizing credit card payments, online payments, auto pay, now more than ever. And we've also, with technology, have adopted IVR payment methods. So that includes paying via auto pay, paying on our website, and then also different ways of paying over the phone and in person. All of these cost money. This topic has been brought up to the district's attention over the years. I believe we have reported on this topic, at least to the Finance Committee. And at that time, when doing a deep dive on our financials, it was still a cost savings to the district to allow our third-party vendors to accommodate those transaction fees and IVR payments. But since then, we have a new finance software. We have more customers utilizing credit card payments and online payments. And it now, looking at the finances, it would be in the best interest of the district to start moving that transaction fee and IVR fee over to the customers if they choose to do so. The one point that we do want to make is that we are continuing to budget for our check processing third-party vendor, so that there is a way for our customers to make a payment and avoid a transaction fee. Those charges from that third-party vendor is minimal. It's pennies to each transaction via check, and it is a bigger cost savings to the district to have that third-party vendor process checks over our staff internally. So
You know what that is per transaction, like 35 cents or something?
it's
like
more
that?
like 3 to 5 cents.
Perfect.
It's
okay.
very, very small.
I think we can handle it.
Oh,
Exactly.
Not $80,000.
okay.
So if we move this direction and we have customers starting to pay those transaction fees, we will obviously be promoting that there is a way for them to make a payment and avoid those fees. And if more customers do start paying via check, that budget will increase as far as the transaction for checks, but it is very minimal.
Pennies, like you said. So that's
Exactly.
perfect.
So I just want to bring that to your attention. So if we do move forward, currently we have talked to our third-party vendor and Tyler Technologies to coordinate, and this would start on July 11th. It will take about 45 days for our third-party vendor to contact all of the banking institutions to move that transaction fee from getting charged to the district over to the customer. But on that date is when we tentatively can start doing that process. As far as outreach, because it is right around the corner, and it's very important to let our customers know that this is coming, and if they want to avoid a transaction fee, they can do so via check. So I have created a billing stuffer for our bills. It's at our printing company right now. So those will go into the bills for our cycle 2 bills in the next few days, and it will be included in the cycle 1 billing cycle for the next month. In addition to that, we will be emailing all of our customers who are signed up for auto pay and online payments and any other email contact information that we have. We'll be sending 3 rounds of emails over the next month, just alerting them that we are going to start implementing this. If they would like to opt out of auto pay and pay via check to avoid that transaction fee, they can, just to make sure that everyone is aware before they make that next payment.
Well,
Well,
can they also make the rest of the year's payments before July 11th?
They could. So there's another.
You know
Get
someone,
the
Scott?
get the
You know
points on their credit card that they're looking for?
Exactly. So there is that option too, and it would just be that one. Exactly. So it isn't until then. So if they do want to make a payment before then, they won't have a transaction fee added. We will be putting postage signage up in our lobby so that customers are aware. The customer service representatives will inform customers prior to them making a payment that a transaction fee will be charged, and do they wish to move forward. If they don't, they can write a check. The last thing I'm doing is starting on Friday is I will be traveling around the county to each district every Friday, going to a different location and setting up a table to talk to customers about AMI, drought, and I can also bring this issue to their attention. So if we do want to proceed with this, it is right around the corner, but we are doing everything we can to get the message out in front of the customers beforehand.
Are debit and credit payments looked at exactly the same?
Those are, we're looking into that. Those are a little bit different. We're talking with Global Payments, who is our third-party vendor, to see how that will work.
So this doesn't include debit payment then?
It doesn't look like it, but we aren't sure yet.
Okay.
I can't
Okay.
confirm.
Well, it should be that a debit card payment, they don't charge the same kind of fees, percentages like credit cards
It's-
do.
It's all
Because it's just
different.
out
Fee,
of
but
their,
it's usually a flat fee.
it's out of their checking account.
Well, it's still treated and processed like a credit card. You just don't have to absorb costs of credit cards because of all the points they earn depending on what credit card. Who we use, there's a flat rate for debit cards because there's no percentage, there's no flat rate plus
What is it?
percentage.
What is it?
We use Vanco, and I want to say I've told you guys about it. The transaction fee for our auto pay customers is 50 cents for each transaction. And with postage being 55 cents.
Well, that was
we
the
have them on,
point that I
yes.
was going to bring
When
up. Yeah.
if you sign up with auto pay with email, there's no cost to you. If I have, because it's still cheaper than us paying postage. If they want something printed, then I charge them 35 cents a month, which is, about what actually it is 35 cents, not 50 cents. And and usually we talk them out of staying on email, and then we can come in anytime they want, and we'll print any reports for them right there, because some people don't have a printer or something, you know. But
That
anyway,
is
tobacco
true,
works
Cindy.
really
That
well.
is true. Some
I know.
people don't have
So,
computers.
you know, and the auto pay is just so seamless. It's just, and it really, anyhow,
Well,
I'm glad to see that you guys are making a change. I think it's warranted, and the next thing that we should probably work on is no more printed mailing, that we send everything email.
that, and that's going to be a stretch. It's not going to be immediate, Cindy.
So
So
we have
that's-
over half of our
let's just-
customers on email. Now, we only have, 1,400, but.
Yeah, okay.
All right,
Do we
go ahead.
have any figures of how many of our customers, because we have a bigger
Oh, I know.
base
I know.
Of our
Just saying.
customers regarding what?
who do their automatic.
So we do know that over half of the customer base has signed up for our online payment software, whether it's auto pay versus just paying online. I don't have those numbers, but regardless, either way, making those payments is a transaction fee. So it isn't. So absolutely over half of our customer base is utilizing something besides checks. Just mailing in a check that costs the district money.
Yeah, because, you're going to have to look at the cost as we say, because postage stamps are going to be going up again.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Before DeJoy leaves.
All right, well.
I'd like to make a motion, move for acceptance of this item.
Second.
Second.
All right, do we have any public comment online, Rebecca? Or Russ, do you have any comments?
I may have missed this in Jessica's explanation, but is there an option to just have a link directly to the bank account and just have it automatically withdrawn from the bank account? I mean,
That's the.
That one. do you know?
Isn't that the auto pay system that you
So if
offer?
it's through our auto pay system online, then there will be a transaction fee through Tyler Technologies. So yeah, it's the way to get out of any transaction fee is mailing in or dropping off a check.
But do you, when you're on auto pay, do you have them send you a paper check? Like Tyler or somebody, or do they actually do an ACH deposit, give you like a list of who paid and here's how much we deposited? Which way is it?
For global payments, are you
For
talking?
any of the payments that are auto pay or credit cards?
So
I don't.
I don't know if I completely understand your question, but we do have an invoice from our third-party vendor showing how everyone paid and what
Well,
those
I
transactions.
think, Russ, I think what happens is when the customer makes their payment online, it's actually posted to the account.
Correct.
Yeah. So like, for instance, at MSD, we do the ACH that you're talking about, Russ. And so every day or whatever we have deposits, we'll get an email with a list of the customers and the amount. We have to post it, but it goes directly into our bank account. That's the ACH stuff.
Right.
So Tyler is posting it to the customer's account and depositing it at a certain time each day. or
Right. And
weekly, or-
then we have our third-party vendor, which is Global Payments, that actually communicates with Tyler and the banking institution.
Is that a reconciling nightmare for the person who does a bank rec?
I don't believe so.
I can imagine. Yeah. And that's what it's like when we get a list. I mean, you should be able to get a report. Well, whatever. Anyhow, it's still a good thing.
Yeah.
So any other comment, Russ?
Well, I'm in support of Scott's motion, but it just seems sort of counterintuitive that as we try to move more and more into handling things electronically, that it would cost more to handle it electronically than to send a check.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just one of these little dilemmas.
Because that was my thought, as I say, the price of a stamp versus the transaction. fee
Right.
is
And the
going to
price
be
of a stamp is cheaper, even if the prices of stamp
Correct.
goes up,
You
it will be
can't
cheaper.
Control the cost on the credit cards. We're
Correct.
spending $80,000 I see in the budget for that type of fee. That's what the district was paying. And if
Yeah.
the customer wants that opportunity, let them pay it or print and mail in a check. Or now you're still offering a no transaction fee by paying with check over the phone or online. So they have options. Another option is they can use their own online banking for free and mail in a check. So there's plenty of options out there, and I don't think the district should be absorbing those costs.
I agree.
Not dollar amount. All right, so we have a first and a second, and any other public comment online? Any public comment here? All right, can we get a vote, please?
Director Thomas,
Yes, please.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
President Cicada.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So Michael, still no change on the other ones?
See Travis here, so we can go ahead.
All right, so before I open the public hearing, I want to mention to the board members, at the last meeting, we asked for the discussion regarding hiring 2 new employees being moved to the July meeting. So when I saw the adoption of the personnel allocation budget, I was thinking that should be moved, but after talking with Michael, we still will approve or not approve this, but the full-time equivalents for the 2 potential new hire positions are not included in here. So it's okay to approve it. It's current. It does not include those 2 employees, the 2 positions that we'll be considering in July. That makes sense? Did I say that?
Right. So
Okay.
The direction to staff was to include the positions in the budget, but not in the personnel allocation.
Correct.
That's what we have here.
So my concern was I thought we wouldn't be approving or even discussing that full-time personnel allocation budget, but we can because it doesn't include those positions we'll talk about. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and open the public hearing, and the time is 1:22-ish. All right, do we have any public comments inside here? Seeing none online? No public comment regarding the budget. Okay, so let's close.
Do we need another
Alright,
presentation on the budget?
Yeah, we have. a
Oh, but I thought,
presentation.
okay, so I did it wrong. It's still open. Michael, I went over that with you.
I'm sorry.
Sorry,
If you have a
guys.
presentation, then see if there's any other discussion before closing.
Is this the same presentation that we had last meeting, or is there changes to the budget?
Similar. There's some.
Very
There's
similar.
a couple of changes.
There's a couple of minor changes,
Okay.
but as part of the budget adoption process, we do go through discussing what the budget is, so it is transparent to people online and in the minutes and all. And also to follow up on what President Cicada said, yes, you do have to adopt a personnel allocation as part of the budget package. That shows what the current allocation is. It can be updated during the year, but it is part of the budget process. And I wanted to touch base on that and get into that further. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
I guess I'm back.
I would like to
Yes.
introduce the board
As of right now, you are an employee?
to Jeff Meyer, who, as of next month, we can publicly announce now will be the district's old and new Director of Administrative Services.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So retirement isn't all what it's cracked up to be. Is that?
Actually, there
Did you
was.
get any retirement presents that you're going to be returning?
No, I think I got a resolution. So we'll have to re-resolution that resolution.
What
Not a
really
rocking
happened
chair.
was Jeff was training with Tom Brady over the summer, and both of them got to talking about retirement and decided that they were.
And all he really needed was a vacation,
All they
right?
needed was a vacation, and
Exactly.
and they both decided to come back out of retirement together.
In this case, a 3-year vacation.
Well, good. Good.
But
You
I'm
look
really,
relaxed.
thank you. I'm really looking forward to
Are
this.
you living back here or in some?
I still live in El Dorado County,
Kentucky?
back and forth. More here than, especially now, with the way it's going on, there'll be much more time spent here. And I'm really looking forward to it. I've had a great reception by everybody here at the district. We're all excited about how we can move forward and continue the journey, the path we're on, but even more, the mission and the strategic plan of this district.
Well, good to see you back. It was costing us an arm and a leg to wrench you.
This is true. That's the other part of it. But however, that being said, I didn't get all of that. That went to the hilltop. Not as much went to me. The budget that you see up here is very similar to the last one we talked about. However, with this, there was some minor changes. One of the minor changes was in the transaction fee, which we were talking about. When we first did the preliminary budget, we had a higher amount of money in the budget for the transaction fees. Now, with the actions that you're taking today, we were able to lower our costs, and we did so. And it dropped down to, I believe, $35,000 from.
Where you at? Transaction fees.
Okay.
What we were just talking
Yeah,
about with
where-
Jessica?
Yeah, what you're
Oh,
correct.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that is an admin
Okay.
services budget
Okay.
line item. So that's what we,
Here, it's
in
here.
this budget, actually in your handout, in the budget package, it will be on, hold on. Page 22, bottom right-hand corner.
Anyhow, I just wasn't the transaction, it was what.
I'm sorry,
Jessica-
third-party
Oh,
fees.
Perfect.
It's under third-party payment processing, and you actually see the $35,000 listed, printed in red on the bottom. It's like the fourth or fifth entry from the bottom
Okay,
on page 22.
In here.
In the budget, no, in the budget
it'll be one of this one.
agenda package.
I can't find it.
You can trust me.
Yeah. If you go to item 4A and then go to page 22.
Remember, this is a honeymoon period where you have to trust me, right?
Oh.
And it's like it's the drop down part with all the info on it, not the summary portions.
I think I
Page
found
will
it.
be green and white.
Yes, I believe this is where we had provided the additional detail
Yes.
on the
Oh, yeah,
transaction.
right, right.
And so this is where you can see where I made the reduction there in the third-party transaction fees.
Guess what? I found it.
Very good.
There was also a change in water resources budget. We added $35,000 to update CCWD's local hazard mitigation plan, which we found out after the budget process started needs to be updated this coming fiscal year. It's one of those mandated plans that you have to
Well,
do.
wasn't that handy?
I know.
You save 35 when you're spending it. What the heck?
Actually, I saved 65 and spending 30.
There we go, 35 taken off right there.
Exactly. So
You threw it
question?
somewhere else.
Well, why didn't we foresee that? Wasn't it on the schedule or something?
It's a 5-year
And-
process,
and by-
and we just missed it earlier in the budget development process. It was Charles that reminded us that this next year will be the last year, and it's a timing issue. So our hope is that because we have a lot that we'll be working on in early calendar year 2023. So we'd actually like to get this one done in advance of the end of the current local hazard mitigation plan. But this plan is our path to get to a lot of FEMA money that we've been very successful in bringing in FEMA grants, and we can't access that money if we don't have a current.
Right, right. No, and I can understand that, but I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Well, I'm asking, what, with just an update, why is it $35,000?
So I can answer both questions. I think Michael did a good job of explaining the schedule. It's really a difference between calendar year and fiscal year, and when we were hoping to get this plan done relative to other things like rate studies and things the district's trying to do. It essentially became, now we need to emphasize this local hazard mitigation plan in the next 2023 fiscal year, starting in July. To answer
Yeah,
your
why?
question about why it costs what it does, since it's an update, we are going to have to go through and look at the latest FEMA guidelines as well as other things that we're going to need to incorporate into the plan in terms of local risks due to climate change and other considerations that weren't necessarily part of the prior plan. Unfortunately, these regulations and requirements just keep increasing. And so there's more info we can pull in. Now, 35 is quite a bit less than developing a new plan, which
Right, we just did one, sort of the county just did it, and we were included on the counties. And that just, happened last year, wasn't it? They did in 21. So here we are looking at 23. What are the big differences? I'd like to see you come back and say, you know, the differences in regulation. I think 35,000, you're doing it, right?
We're going to use a consultant to assist with that.
Right.
Yes.
Which, so there's, FEMA has very specific guidelines it lays out for the process that you have to go through.
Okay.
And there's public, there's outreach to stakeholders, there's public meetings that have to happen. There's just a process that we did this, I recall 5 years ago when the district did it, and I participated as an outside entity. And it was a similar, the cost hasn't gone up all that much. It's really though that getting us through that participation process. And we do our own, we don't buy.
So if we
don't
hired
participate in
the,
counties.
that new position in the water resources, could they do these updates? I mean, I've been through the process and
Well, just to
Not
clarify,
rocket
our
science.
plan is not the county's plan.
I understand. I understand. In
And
fact,
as
I
far as-
participated in this one here a little bit as well.
Okay, and then as far as doing it internally, if we would rather the FT work on that rather than something else, that's something we can discuss.
Well, it could be a possibility.
Yeah,
I'm
you
I'm
could
just
wait.
saying, it's just, you know, we got that grant to do, you know, UWPA and UPUD got their grant to get theirs done. And, you know, it was a very lengthy process. To me, for an update, $35,000, I mean, really, how much time should there be involved in that? So anyhow, just, you know, look at the criteria and maybe come back and say, you know what, President Cicada, you're right. It looks like we're only going to need, you know, 15 hours of time to do this. And I just threw that out. I know it's probably exaggeration, but just we have to cut corners everywhere we can. And we saved 35 in one end and we just plopped it right back over here for another expenditure. That's all. I'm just going to push on you guys to try and spend less where we
And
can.
honestly, I think the 35,000 is conservative, given I've worked as a consultant and on these plans with consultants in the past on updates. For instance, our urban water management plan update was 6 figures to get that entire thing done. So 35 is a third.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, obviously, we're trying to cut corners and be conscientious about it. I would have myself potentially this FTE to support the consultant.
Right.
But,
It's, no,
The criteria, have you seen the criteria? And so
Yes.
you've got a budget based on working with consultants or whatever is 35,000.
we have what we believe is a reasonable cost estimate for what this local hazard mitigation plan update will do.
and that includes, as Brad mentioned, we are going to take some of it on ourselves. We're not outsourcing the whole thing. And I think 35 is what it was 5 years ago.
I believe so.
We're trying to keep it
Oh.
as low as we can.
Well, that's
And that
amazing.
But
includes
you got a
staff.
grant, didn't you?
No,
first
and that-
time.
but that includes staff doing some of the work in-house in order to keep that cost low. So
Definitely
that's
a lot
the-
of that.
And the trade-off here was that this is not, we're not bringing this because we found savings somewhere else. This is because
I
we
know.
realize we need to get this plan done this year. And I think this is the most efficient way to do it.
Especially since we need it in place for the following calendar year to be eligible for FEMA.
How much in FEMA funds have you received since you first did the LHMP?
Well, just in the last, I mean, right now we've got over 3 million for the Redwood tank replacement project.
And that's through FEMA.
Yes.
Okay.
We've got the Hunter's raw water project, which we don't know yet, but it'll probably be a couple million.
Okay, so our 65,000 was worth it.
I'm sure.
I agree, we need these plans. That's not the discussion here.
There's others I'm forgetting.
It's also
The generators.
for the fire.
I'm well aware of the benefit. I was disappointed to see we saved 35,000. All of a sudden we spent it. It was just happened to be a coincidence, I'm sure. But anyhow,
Okay.
thank you.
And you made a statement a while ago when it's successful that, you know, you'll hear about it. And if it's not successful, you'll hear about it also.
No, we all need one of those LHMPs. I get that. We need to have options for that FEMA funding.
Mhm.
Okay, next.
Here in 2008 when we started that process. It is a time-consuming process, but well worth it on the financial side, just because of the regulatory requirements.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's basically the two key elements that were added to this budget.
What about, I noticed that on the budget summary, this time versus last time, the revenue went down. Obviously, the transfers in came up to offset that. Why'd they come down? And then my other comment would be in your narrative on the budget, you were talking about the investment income and with what's going on with investments and stocks, should we look at that now and potentially lower some of those interest revenue?
Let me address your first question on the budget. Revenues went down 65,000 because we were looking to get a total of $100,000 to recover our fees for third-party fees. We were going to offset it by charging revenue, but then once we found that, we were able to just bypass that process completely, which is allow Global and Pilot to recover their own fees. It's.
Okay, so you had originally had thinking you were going to collect the fees and then you just put an expense to send them back. You were going to like be the middleman to collect them.
Exactly. Now we're going over the
Okay.
middleman. So that's the reduction there.
Okay,
Transfers in went up 35,000 because we have to pay for the hazard mitigation plan. That was not included in. the
Right.
numbers.
That's what you said.
So that's where I was looking, and that's the changes for that. And I believe when we're talking about investment income, yes, there are some challenges out there, but please remember too, we also have a significant portion of our money in LAIF.
Leif, right.
And LAIF,
that's 0.64.
yeah, it's going up. Hey,
Oh.
Better than what it was.
Oh.
and that's where you don't get loss of principal. in
Okay.
LAIF. So all you're doing is earning revenue, and that's much higher than it was when we were looking at this a year ago. It was down at 25, 30 basis points.
Right.
So we're getting significantly more money in LAIF. However, all that being said, I've reached out to Carlos Ablites of Chandler, and once we get all this behind us, I wanted him to come in and talk to us on an update and make a presentation to your board. And I did reach out to Carlos, and some of our revenue projections are based on information Chandler did provide us.
Okay,
Because I think it is important for us to get, a presentation. Just don't give us figures month after month after month.
No, I planned all along to get Carlos here. Timing has been an issue.
Yeah,
But after the budget's done, we'll get him up here on a really hot day. So he has to go from the Bay Area up to here when it's 100.
wasn't he the one that was in the electric car last time that got delayed?
I don't
Who
know
was
who
that?
else has an electric car.
Somebody from the finance team of some sorts was in an electric car. And I remember they were late because they couldn't go very fast. Okay. Anything else on the budget?
No, the only thing I did add to the budget pack, PowerPoint that you see into the budget packet, I broke down the proposed wastewater and water budgets so that you can see that those two are balanced as well. And that's in pages 3 and 4 of your PowerPoint presentation, this one,
this one.
yes.
Russ, do you have any questions for Jeff
And that one, that's good.
before we go to the CIP stuff?
I was going to ask the same question that you asked on the outlook for continuing that expectation on the interest income. So if he's confident that Leif is going to fill in the gap, then I'm happy. Thanks.
Thank you, Russ. Do we want to talk anything about the capital?
So before we move on to that, if I could just make a couple of highlights or points that aren't in the budget, but we're tracking. And we may see in January. And I know we try to avoid making adjustments to the budget after it's adopted, but there's two things that I want to mention. One is fuel costs. And we increased the budget for fuel, but based on where things are trending right now, we think what we have in the budget is not enough. We decided not to make any changes at this point and see how the next 6 months plays out. But if things stay where they're at right now, part of the mid-year budget adjustment will be an increase in the cost for fuel. And then the other one that I wanted to mention is it's been a topic of discussion for many years. And recently it's been brought up a lot more frequently is our kind of archaic document management system and the number of hard copies that we still maintain, and the need to upgrade our document management system, get some of our files out of file cabinets and into a searchable format that we can reference. And there's several ongoing efforts where that's becoming more and more of an issue for us. We'd like to get to the point where we can hire local inexpensive labor to come in and scan documents and get it all loaded into an online format for us. But the software, we can't do that until we have a structure in place that will organize that information so that we'll be able to go back and find it later, which is critical. There's a couple of different options for that. I was just talking to a vendor the other day about what seems to be a very common approach for special districts, software called Laserfiche, but we didn't add anything to the budget. There is going to be an upfront cost to that, and this is part of the reason why we didn't add it to the budget yet, is because we don't know exactly what it's going to be.
Any projection or
I wouldn't
any?
be surprised if it's in the $50,000 to $80,000 range.
Regarding that management, scanning and making that all digital, I would recommend that you actually speak with the end users, because I know MSD, we were going to do this, and one of my board members happens to know about this. And he had a lot of customers that they weren't totally satisfied. It's really important that you have the organizational chart, if you will, dialed in before you start scanning anything. So most people, it sounds really good and easy, and it's important, I think necessary, but do your legwork so we don't have anything coming back like perhaps what happened with Tyler, maybe, I would reach out to those who actually use it and not just the people on the referral list.
Right. No, and that's
do your research.
That's
first.
why we talked about it, and Jeff was making the same point that you're making, and I think it's a good one, that we're not ready yet to put a line item in the budget for this item because we still have that work to do. But we also, like I said, it's becoming a bigger issue for us. So that's one where if between now and January, we've done that due diligence and we're confident in a path forward, that might be another request that we bring back in January, because I think it's at a point where, and we'll see where the budget's at that point as well. But it's at a point where the level of frustration and time spent because we don't have it is just increasing, and we really do need it. But you're absolutely right that it needs to be done right, and it needs to be done well, or it can be disastrous.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in fact, when you get to that point, I'm probably going to ask, I would like to see your plan, if you will.
And
Sure, I may not be here in
members
January.
of the board, this is something, like I said, Michael and I discussed, but I also informed that we had discussions when I was here 3 to 5 years ago. And every time you embark on a project like this, you really have to put in the work up front.
So my question to you two, do you two do the filing? The paper filing?
I have done some filing.
But do you do it today?
Do I do it today? No.
Not really. We have somebody else that does that. So I would recommend you pull in that person who does
absolutely.
that. You know what I mean? And hear
They're gonna
from the
drive it.
end user.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is where everybody, the key players, key personnel, people who are involved, the end users, as you said, will be part of this process. Because I myself grew up in the Dewey Decimal System, so I probably won't be the best reference.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, no,
But we will,
yeah.
this is where we're going to take our time, as Michael said. We're going to be looking at all options, reach out to people who've used it, gone through implementation, what works, what doesn't work, so that when we come back to the board and give you a presentation as to this is what we think is the best option, we can all come to the same conclusion and move forward with your board's blessing.
and I'll say it one more time, is I think you need to involve from the get-go, at least for the first meeting, are the end users. And it's probably your customer service staff who have to go back and look for things, right? And just ask them, you know, how would you file it? You know, would it be under whatever?
Sure.
And talk to them first. It's the end users, just like our operators out there. You know,
They're
you
going to
know.
drive the process.
That is part of the plan, and I have enough of the rapport with Corinne and everybody else in customer service. Finance is going to have to do the same thing because we're going to be filing our documents as well. So end users are fully involved, because if they're not, and you give them something that doesn't work. it's a failure.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
So it
those
is
are the
ground,
two
it is
things.
ground up.
Yes, it is, very much so.
So we know we're coming back next month to talk about new employees. Those are two things, though, that we're tracking that we may come back to the board at some point during the next fiscal year for adjustments if needed. One other thing to point out real quick is Director Skid had asked us to add to the bullet point list of highlights and expenditures the $100,000 we're anticipating needing for the cost of service study and rate study process. So that's discussed in the staff report a little bit now, but that was already incorporated. That's not an increase. That was already in the budget. We just put it in the staff.
We
report.
wanted the narrative portion of it in here, that's all,
Yes.
for transparency or what have you.
And that process will be starting soon.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions on the operating budget before we proceed to the CIP budget?
Russ, anything new come up for you?
Yeah, I was raising my hand here, but Michael, if you recall at the last meeting, I raised the issue of red diesel and how much potential savings we could have if we did a better job of using the red diesel where it's legal to use it. I was given some assurances that there would be an analysis of that and some sort of a plan put in place. And so my question is, have you received any feedback on that from our operations people?
Not yet, no. But we will look into it.
Do you have any red diesel at all used here? Anyone?
Probably infrequent if we do, but
You do.
yeah.
Because
So I think we'd have to
MSP
have
has
some
it.
dedicated storage for that, but
I think Hunt has it. don't they?
one place.
Quite a bit of equipment is used.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have one storage tank and refuel multiple pieces of equipment with it. Okay, so I guess the request would be, let's look into whether there's benefits to increasing the usage of it.
Well, one of my pet peeves about being on this board is that a board member like me can ask for somebody to look into something, and then you ask if anybody looked into it, and the answer is we haven't yet, but we will. I would submit to you that there are thousands of dollars, potentially monthly, that could be saved on the red diesel fuel, because you don't have to put that in the backhoes. You don't have to put it in the excavators. You don't have to put it in the generators. And with the price of diesel particularly going through the roof, the cost savings could be huge. So, I mean, at the next meeting, I would expect somebody to say, yeah, we looked into it, Director Thomas, and it would cost us $1,000 a month to save 800. So please provide that information. I think it's critical.
We will do that. I think that just came up at Thursday's engineering committee meeting. So I don't think in defense of staff, we haven't had a chance to look into that yet, but we will bring it back to the next board meeting.
I made a note to direct staff to bring that back to the next meeting for you, or at least
Okay.
the
We'll do
second
it.
meeting in
Absolutely.
July.
And I
Okay,
know Mike is in the process of looking into it as well, and just, yeah, it's in the works.
thank you. All right, that's it for Russ at the moment. We'll move on to capital outlay real quick.
CIP, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay,
that one.
CIP.
You wrote it as capital outlay. That's what you call
Yeah,
it.
I see capital outlay budget has not changed. The CIP budget has not changed.
I just have a couple of questions quickly. I don't need some real big drawn out things. I'm on page 3 of the agenda memo.
Okay,
It's capital outlay, page 3 of 6, and you have a list of the expenditures funded.
Yes.
So can I get what is the water quality sampling stations? Can I get just a quick little, what is that?
Just to do.
Where'd Damon go?
Probably the right person to touch on that.
Yes. And not a big thing, just give me a brief little.
Yeah, those sample stations are regulatory sample stations that we do monthly, weekly samples.
I know what those samples are, but why are they stations? What are you doing? Are you adding multiple stations or are you upgrading?
Replacing and upgrading current stations, yep.
Okay, and then regarding the septic dump station, I think that's a great idea. And you're doing this dump station, where are we going to take it, or is it going to be at a particular treatment plant? And then are we generating income, I would imagine, allowing people to empty their septic tanks, right?
For our CCWD customers, and this will be located at the La Cantena wastewater treatment plant for our in-house.
So like Sweet Pea could come down? Oh,
No.
no, you said just in-house.
Just in-house.
Or- So coming from West Point or whatever, wherever we have.
West Point, Wallace, Southworth, all those septic tanks.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. And one more. Michael, this might be you. The operational headquarters interior office build out, we have a budget of 25,000. So how long do you anticipate with that expenditure? When can we anticipate another, we got to upgrade the office again? I just
Good
think because
question.
it's a new building that I'm really surprised that you have to spend $25,000.
Right, so
So-
it's not necessarily an upgrade or a remodel. We're not replacing anything. The building wasn't built out to begin with. And so over time, it's built out internally with additional offices. That's what this is for. So I don't know.
How many offices are you going to, what are you going to
Yeah.
get out of this? Like a new soundproof
Probably-
room, offices?
No,
Give me a quick
it'll
idea.
probably be hopefully 3 offices. It used to be the estimate, the ballpark estimate that George always used to give me was about $5,000 to add, like where Stacy and Deja are, for example. Those were not there. And it's about $5,000 to add those offices. That was crazy price increases. So, you know, for this amount, maybe we can add 3 offices.
Okay,
And then I don't, off the top of my head, I'd have to think about whether, hopefully there wouldn't be additional need next fiscal year.
what about office furniture and all that? kind of stuff?
That would include, for each of those new offices, yeah, we'll have to purchase some.
And so
furniture.
who will get these offices? What departments? or
So
what
right now,
staff?
we plan to increase, we're potentially add additional engineering staff. We know when we bring on an additional engineer, we need another office already. The 2 current construction inspectors, the new inspector position that we just added, are currently sharing the small conference room, which may work. That might be an okay long-term scenario, but we're probably going to need at least another office for construction management, maybe 2 for construction management purposes. So there's some reconfiguring that will need to happen, and then adding those 2 positions. And then also, as we look forward to succession planning, assuming Jeff's going to retire again someday, right now, we're hoping to be able to build in some overlap for some certain positions. And right now, we don't have anywhere for people to come in and sit really even. So there's need right now. I would hope that if we do that this year, we don't need to do it again the next fiscal year, but it's hard to predict.
Well, these are one of those things that I think, well, first of all, I spend my personal money, probably not really good. I usually go buy whatever I want. However, when it's other people's money, I like to really make sure, and you guys know this, that we're spending it properly. And this, to me, is it a need? Perhaps. Is it a want? Absolutely. Like right now, you've been making ends meet by using the that conference room, it's not ideal. I mean, they should have their own office and I get that. But when I asked for you to be looking at ways to save money and not keep spending it, and then we have to do a rate study and more than likely raise rates. You know, it's just things like this that maybe, you know, we have this big, beautiful building and, you know, I mean, every time you're asking to spend money on something that I don't think is a major need, I'm just going to remind you of how important it is to do where we can to not spend the money. This, I feel, is one of them, but I'm not going to say no on it. But when I was asking you about, okay, what's it going to be next? I was being, I don't think facetious is quite the word, but I was just saying, I didn't want it to sound like, okay, what's next? What's next? How much more? I don't agree with this project, but I'm not going to say no. I just, you know, especially with the economic times we're in right now, I mean, we've got to really adjust that spending habit and perhaps wait down the road a little bit more, you know, but anyhow, you guys know how I feel about that.
Yeah, may I interject here?
You may.
Since I was here from day one
Mhm.
in the old office, the
I
old building,
remember.
and then came in here when we were looking at it and built it, and I believe Director Ratterman was here as well. They built a shell, and that area back there was the bowling alley. It went from the lunchroom all the way down to the GM's office of nothing.
Yeah.
And so it was built that way so that we can then modify it and build out as we need it. First thing they put in were those rolling files, which were phenomenal. And then they looked at different office spaces. So it's a continuation. The original building was not meant to be the permanent layout for it. It's just, we got it up, we got it in and moved on. And I agree that we have to rub pennies together. I do that personally as well. And so as we look at this, please trust me, when we get ideas and looking at how much it's going to cost, I will be reviewing that as well.
Yeah.
And
Well-
I would characterize it as a need, though. We definitely need additional offices.
But like I said, you and I can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, I'm not saying no to it or nothing like that. I'm just reminding everybody that I feel my job is to make sure that you folks do, you know, really, really, really good on how you spend money.
And I appreciate.
So
your
they
input.
will anticipate.
That's what I want
Yeah,
to do.
yeah.
I'm going to be
Uh-huh.
that little guy sitting right here on your shoulder
Uh-huh.
saying, don't do it, don't do it.
And we appreciate that.
Good.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
There's also a question online, but yes.
Oh.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Why don't we go to the
interrupt you,
online
but
real
we
quick?
can-
Oh,
no, I
go
would say
finish
Go to
that.
online.
Go online.
Is-
Hello?
Hello,
Okay.
go ahead. You can make your comment.
Oh, very good. I'm sorry. I didn't know when or where I would make a comment, but this is your friend out of Copperopolis, Ralph Copeland. And excuse me. Thank you, President Sakata, for watching our money. I greatly appreciate that. Also, Director Thomas and the others there at the board. We really appreciate us end users watching out for our nickel. Only one question on the CIP program. The Copper Cove Lower Upper Cross Country Gravity Sewer Force Main. Is this something new?
I didn't realize that was a public comment thingy, but it's okay.
Oh,
Let's answer
it
that.
is a public comment.
It's-
Should I-
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
You're here. Let's finish that one.
I
So that-
apologize.
I
Yeah,
I
it
can look, I have
was-
my old one,
so-
the previous one.
Ralph,
Page-
it's not a
page 20.
new, it's a project that we have identified over the years. It was recently added to the CIP. Yes.
Okay. And is
So
this
that's
the
one that we know, we have a significant bottleneck. We're basically at capacity on some of those facilities already.
Okay.
So,
It was in there at the last meeting too, I believe.
yeah.
The Lower
when
upper
was that
gravity
added?
force train. Yeah, you had it in the last.
We prioritized all the CIP projects, so we developed a list of approximately 40
Right. I
CIP
remember that.
projects.
Yeah.
We identified the fact that, like Michael said, there's just large amount of flow coming from the furthest point of the wastewater collection system in Copper. And it's negatively impacting all the manholes that flow into what we call our lower cross-country lift station, which then pushes the sewage to what we call our upper cross-country lift station. And so we started to analyze the impacts to the collection system from the furthest point to lower, and then understood that the impacts are also being seen at upper. So we need to really have a project on the books that's going to change the size of that pipeline from lower to upper.
Very cool.
And I
Because we
don't-
have, that problem has come up several times, and we
Right.
talk about it, we identify it, so you're gonna do
Yeah.
something about it.
Yeah, and some years ago, there was an improvement project to lower, and it improved the operation of the lower cross-country lift station, but it did not change the pipeline from lower to upper.
Right.
It was just focused on the lift station.
Right, so it's been discussed in multiple different contexts over the years. We do hope at some point there will be some development in that area that would help contribute to the cost of upgrades. But even if there's not at some point, that's why we made sure to add it to the CIP at some point in the future. That's a cost the district would incur.
So along those lines, what is growth in Copper these days? Has it?
Well, there's potential in the area of this project that we're discussing right now for, a multifamily housing unit or something along a mixed use development. There's a property where there was previously a development had been proposed back in 08 or pre-08. And nothing has moved forward for various reasons. If something were to move forward there, that might accelerate the timeline for this project, but also help bring in some funding for it. But at this point, I don't think there's any realistic, at least not in the short term, expectation of development there. So we wanted to get it on the CIP so that we can make sure that it's in the mix when we're discussing the priority.
And no money is expected to be spent on it this year, though, as far as our budget goes.
So,
That is
According to the schedule, it's
Right.
not.
correct.
Okay,
We just
right.
wanted to make sure it was on the
The
CIP.
The CIP schedule.
Yes.
Was that the
All right.
Cobra Mina?
it's right near there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
All right, do you have any more questions? Bruce?
Yeah.
All right,
Oh,
we'll come back to public comment.
Did we answer
Okay.
your question?
Oh,
Sorry,
I was gonna say, that's the only question I have, guys. Thank you very much. It sounds like you're keeping an eye on the existing infrastructure in Copper, which needs upgrading, repair and replacement. And you guys are on top of it, and we really appreciate it. Thank you, Russ, and thank you, President Sakata, and Michael, and the rest of the crew. I'm out.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
We'll come back to
Thank you,
public
Ralph.
comment afterwards, but thank you, Mr. Copeland. All right, Bertha.
Okay, yes, back on page number 4 on debt service, I'm reading that explanation, and haven't I seen that explanation before?
Which one is,
This is,
oh, and the staff report.
yeah, in the staff report.
Oh,
I mean,
which one, the admin building?
It's the same.
It's, a lot of it is the same as what was
Yeah.
presented to Finance Committee and to the board previously. So there's not a ton of new information. We actually took some information out. And then we added the $100,000 for cost of service study. So,
Yes.
I mean, like last week.
Michael, I think she's,
Last year.
Director Underhill is referring to this building, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. your
Yeah.
question.
Last payment?
Yes, remember when we made the loan, we were making loan payments and then things got
We
tight.
loaned
And then
it
we
to
deferred
ourselves.
it. Yes, but then we deferred some of the payments. I went
Right.
back, I think that was, and it got deferred a little bit when budget tightening. This is the last payment.
We will never see this again.
Well, for this time.
I don't want to
Michael
do my
wants to
best
spend a
George
lot of
Bush.
money.
It is my intent that this building gets paid off this year, this coming fiscal year. Unless there is something that's absolutely catastrophic, this building will be paid off.
Okay. Okay. We're
Hold
gonna
you
hear that?
to it.
Yeah,
Yep, I'm glad to hear
No,
that.
and that's wonderful, and I think that's great.
Yes.
That
And just because we pay that off, don't go getting another loan that we have to try. All right. Anything
Okay.
else, Bertha?
Yes. On page number 5, we're talking about, my question was, Mia, is she concentrating now on Padilla and not Feinstein? As far as our water is,
Both. And they've both been very helpful recently, actually. So Senator Feinstein is still the chair of the Water and Energy Budget Subcommittee. And she submitted a request or included a request for the upcoming fiscal year budget of 2.5 million for the dam raise project in Copper Cove for the Copper Cove wastewater treatment facility. We were asking for 5 and per year, and it's ultimately going to be a $10 million project. It got whittled down a little bit, but we're hoping to still build it back up over time. And even if it stayed at 2.5, that would give us a big head start on that project, as long as the ultimate dollar amount that's authorized goes up, which is where Senator Padilla comes in, because he's included a request in the new WRDA to increase our Section 219 authorization from $3 million to over $13 million. And so we've had assistance from both of their offices recently.
Okay. I just like to see movement.
There's been movement. It's been a kind of a couple of recent successes, I would say.
Okay. Okay,
Is that it?
that's it.
All right, Scott, do you have anything?
All of my questions have been answered now.
Awesome. Russ, do you have anything to comment on or
Well,
questions?
yeah, I know we're bouncing around a little bit here, but I want to go back to something that Michael said and remind all of us that several years ago, when we first started talking about the construction of the warehouse and all the wonderful things that were going to happen there, I remember specifically that some of the offices internally were anticipated to be used by certain elements of the operations. I think that that it was mentioned that the inspectors could work out of there. And then I just heard Michael say that some of the offices internally in the administration building might be used by inspectors or other people in operations. So what happened to the idea of having them use space in the warehouse?
We are still planning on including office space in the warehouse and bringing in more people from around the district to report to the warehouse. That's one of the big benefits of that project, I think. I don't believe the inspectors are part of that plan, though. They will still be in the main office. There'll be more people reporting to this location that will have reporting sites in the warehouse, but I don't believe the inspectors are among them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Any public comment online? None? Any public comment here in this room? Seeing none, no other discussion?
Can I please remind the board that there are 2 resolutions that you're going to be passing today. The first is for the budget,
We'll be voting on today.
and the second one will be the personnel allocation. And unless, I didn't bring up the personnel allocation, if there's not any questions, we can move forward to the resolutions.
We take those separately, right?
Yes, you do.
I'll make a motion, adopt this resolution for our fiscal year 22-23.
Aren't I supposed to close the hearing first?
Oh,
Is that right?
Close the
Excuse
public.
me.
okay.
All right, so we closed the public comments and now
Public
closing
hearing.
the public hearing.
Oh.
All
Okay.
right, so you got the
So
time on?
we're right. I already said part of it.
Go for it, Scott.
Repeat it, please.
This is the resolution adopting our fiscal year 22-23 operating capital improvement budget, capital improvement, but program budget, CIP budget.
His second, I'll second.
And,
We're doing them separately.
oh,
I'll make a second on that one.
okay.
And we get a roll call vote?
Okay. Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
Yes,
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
President Cicada.
Yes.
You want to do this?
okay. I'd like to make a motion adopting the personnel allocation for fiscal years 2022, 23.
Second.
And roll call vote?
Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
President Cicada.
Yes.
I want to thank the board members for your patience in going through this process. Look forward to a few more of these before I retire. And I'm hoping that Director
No.
Davidson will be able to attend some of those because I know how much he really enjoys these budget
Yes.
hearings.
Well, we're going to.
We're going to have to change the word retirement. Change it completely, take it out of our
Never
your
retire.
vocabulary.
There we go. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
staff. And yeah, I can push on you guys, but know that I really appreciate that you're all doing a great job. So
Thank you
let's
very
go.
much for the support. So we do have Travis Small from CPUD online now. So if we wanted to move.
Jump to
that,
5B.
It's
that one,
actually.
is that
No, 5B.
It's 5B.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
discussion action regarding second amended and restated agreement between Calaveras Public Utility District and Calaveras County Water District for the sale of surface water. And that would be Brad Arnold and who's on the line?
Travis Small is the CPUD.
Got it. Hi,
Yep.
Travis.
And Russ, your hand is still up, just in case you.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
You hope he's not getting tired.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, good afternoon, board members. What we bring to you today is next in the series of agreements that have been enacted by CCWD and CPUD since 1976, facilitating the purchase by CCWD of Shads and Middle Fork water that CPUD has in their Shads Reservoir. It is based on a pre-14 claim. It is upstream of our Middle Fork pumping plant and the confluence with Bear Creek. So we were able to bring it into our West Point system using that facility. Now, the current agreement that was signed last year was a 1 year, essentially to be able to allow us to clean up and assess our Bear Creek water rights and also to allow time for CPUD to review their own water rights situation on Shads and to investigate their own costs. That agreement, as it stands right now, would end on July 11th of this year. So the new amendment that's being brought before the board today is to extend out the term of that 1 year agreement to essentially push it out 5 years to June 30th of 2027. It continues the 200 acre foot per year limitation, but this time includes a 40 acre foot per year minimum take by CCWD. It's worth mentioning that since 1976, our average is around 47 acre feet a year. So that 40 is roughly in line with the average that we've taken. And of course, that'll all depend on our West Point need for supplemental water. Recall that Bear Creek water rights, including a pre-1914 right as well as a permitted right, are the primary water supply for West Point. This provides a much needed supplemental supply in the instances where Bear Creek runs dry, usually at late summer of each year and fall, as well as in situations like right now where we see water rights curtailments and other things that impact our Bear Creek rights. The other major change in this amendment is that the rate is increasing to $150 an acre foot based on the minimum take all the way up to the maximum volume. That could be anywhere between $6,000 to $30,000 per year, of course, depending on what we need for West Point. And the maximum we've ever taken in a single year is around 171 acre feet, which that's since the late 70s. And as we'll see with the later agenda item, looking at the water supply and demand assessments, we could, if things really go belly up on us, we could be looking at a similar 171 acre foot take this year for this contract here. So we just need to see what happens with curtailments, our Bear Creek right, et cetera. CPUD did approve this agreement during their latest meeting, and so they're looking out to our board to see if you all want to adopt this agreement as well to extend out for 5 years.
And two quick notes, if I could, and this is my fault, not Brad's, but we made a change during the CPUD board meeting that is not captured here. On page 1 of the agreement, under section 1A, Director Blood at CPUD pointed out that the word take could mean different things in that sentence. And so I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Travis, but we decided to replace take with purchase.
That sounds better.
That is correct. He thought it sounded better.
There is no 1A.
There is on the second amended and restated agreement. It's the last 3 or 4 pages of the,
Okay.
of this agenda item, that package, right before the resolution.
So it doesn't, that's the intent, is that it's a minimum purchase amount that the district will purchase every year regardless of whether we use it or not. So I think the change made sense. We had a good discussion, appreciate the word from Travis and from the CPUD board that went into this. There were a lot of good discussions, including the one at their last board meeting. The other item that came up is more of a staff item. It doesn't really have changed the agreement. But there was some discussion about making sure that we're reporting on a regular basis what the consumption is rather than just once a year. So we had some discussions about coming up maybe with a reporting form that is a standard way for us to report our consumption, and in a more timely basis. It could be a monthly reporting form or something along those lines. So I committed on behalf of the district that with this agreement in place, staff would work with Travis at CPUD to come up with a better reporting methodology.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And certainly we can mimic what is the format is currently for the water rights reporting system, something that CPUD would have easy to just report our consumption on top of their use of this water right in the eRIM system that the state board manages.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Brad. Bertha, do you have any questions?
no, I'm good.
Scott?
I don't. I actually attended this CPUD meeting and when this was reviewed, so I'm very familiar with this.
All right, Russ, do you have any questions or comments?
Oh, you're on mute, Director Thomas.
All right,
He's lost his.
I have no questions.
All right, any public comment online? None? And any public comment here? All right, are we ready for a motion?
I can make a motion adopting resolution executing the second amended and restated agreement between Calaveras Public Utility District and Calaveras County Water District for the sale of surface water.
Second.
All right, Rebecca, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
President Cicada.
Yes,
Thank you, directors.
thank you, Brad. Shall I go to 5C and then D and then come back to A, since it might be a little bit longer discussion? No.
That was the only request I had as far as.
Okay. All right, well, let's go back in order then. New business 5A, discussion action regarding the award of construction contract for the West Point and Wilseyville wastewater treatment plant consolidation projects. Charles? Hello, Charles.
Hey, Chuck.
Hey, Chuck.
Chucky.
So this is the West Point Wilseyville wastewater consolidation project. As you know, we have had we've been pursuing this project for many years, probably at least 5 years. Currently, we have a $4.75 million grant from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. We put the project, we have the design finished by Next Gen Consulting, the design engineers on listening in and can answer questions if necessary. But we put it out to bid. Bid opening was March 31st this year. And bid came back at 8.57 million. So there's pretty big funding gap there. So we went back to Clean Water State Revolving Fund staff. They said there's more funding available for this particular project. It's because it's a consolidation project, it's up to $125,000 per connection, which we have 163 connections. So if you do the math, that's like $20 million. We're not even close to that. We're including everything, design, construction, our budget's about 9.93 million. Where our dilemma is here, and
is in that fact that the bids from March 31st are only good for 90 days. So they're going to expire on the 28th of this month. So at that point, we did go to KW Emerson, asked them if they could extend their bids additional time. They would incur costs increases to do that just because of the current economy and the way supply and chain issues and all that situation. But so that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that
But if they do increase their pricing and we don't approve this today and they do increase their pricing, you just got finished saying that the state revolving fund can go up to well over 10 million according to the staff report and up to almost 20 million. Is that available in the state revolving fund right now?
those funds are available. We have to get through a long checklist of items that says, okay, we're going to release the funds to CCWD and approve.
And
approve it.
as well as probably a long list of checklists to increase it from 4 million to 8 million.
Correct.
Which is what they're
That's what they're
attempting to
doing,
do right now.
Right.
And if their 8 million does go up to 12 million, we'll have to go through that same checklist to make sure they can increase it from 4 million to 12 million.
Well, that's, the funding request we put in was for 9.93 million. So if we were to,
When was that request put in?
Plus, we'd be rebidding the project at that point. We would be starting over.
Starting over with bids. Right. The design is already there. Wouldn't be starting over with anything else besides the bidding process.
Right, but then we'd have to go back, the work that's already been done with the state in terms of putting the request to increase the funding, we'd have to go back through that.
When did that start with the state increasing it from 4 to 9?
That's happened since the bid opening. We've been discussing it with them.
Over the last few months.
Originally.
So between March 20th and now.
Yeah, originally their funding guidelines, we happened to fall in a time when their funding guidelines were changing. So during that time, we went from not being able to fund our project fully to being able to fund our project fully because of some of their funding guidelines that actually changed and increased the limits. So that was fortunate.
So if I can add to that,
Yeah.
real quick. So the first, right out of the gate after the bids were open, the first 2 to 3 weeks of kind of focusing our effort were related to that fact. We were under the impression we could not increase the funds. And so we were working to try to see if we could basically make the project a shell of what it originally was intended to be, so we could reduce the construction costs
To 475 or somewhere near there?
Right. So,
Okay.
so in an effort to reduce the construction costs, but really retain the same level of effort that the state signed off on for the project initially. So we were trying to walk this balance. Can we reduce the costs? We were getting with KW around, I want to say 7 million. And really anything beyond would have started to change the project entirely. So the state, we were concerned, we had conversations with the state about whether or not they would feel like they were funding the same project. And so after about week 3, then we find they have changed these rules related to funding. And all of a sudden, because it's a regionalization project, it's a consolidation project, and it's a severely disadvantaged community, we were told it ticked every single priority box that the state has for projects currently, and that we could go from 45,000 to 125. And so that's when the conversation then began at the state of, okay, what do we now have to do to push this request forward? And all the while, this 90-day time frame with the valid bids, the responsible and responsive bids is ticking. The clock is ticking.
Here's my concern about that timeline, the June 28th timeline. That seems to be a concern, and it seems like we might be taking a risk. And what is that risk? What is that risk to CCWD if we lock this in with Emerson today or before June 28th, we sign that contract and lock those prices in, and the state revolving fund comes back and doesn't increase this from 4, or they come in somewhere between 4.75 and 9 million, whatever we're asking for now, what is the risk to us? And is it just delays, or is it millions of dollars now we're tied into Emerson?
Well, there's a couple things to consider there, and you guys, if I don't think of all of them, jump in here, but one is that you proceed with the progress of the project to the point that you're not extended beyond what you understand is actually available to you now prior to receiving any acknowledgement that you're going to receive a boost or an increase in the funding. So you work through the project, you work through the whole process with KW to stay within that $4 million budget, if you will, for the next 4 to 6 months. This is the time.
But we would have signed an $8 million contract with them. What is it? What does that contract
That's true.
oblige us to? I mean, they're going to let us out of $4 million in payments at some point because we got a good relationship with them?
We can cancel the contract at any point.
Oh.
And
We have to settle up with them, whatever.
Wherever they are at that point. Okay.
That's correct. That's correct. And so there's also an opportunity there. This is where the dance is so you have material costs that are only increasing. A large component of this project is related to actual infrastructure pieces, components, if you will. So when do you pull the trigger on the components? And when are those costs going to change relative to what they are now? Have they already changed? And this is kind of, these are the issues.
Okay, we can cancel that contract at any time. Can they submit what are the change orders because equipment is costing more than they anticipated at any time also through the?
No, they cannot.
No. They're tied to the 8.8. As long as we're using the same scope.
That's something changing. Right.
Something like the scope of the work or the rules from the state. What kind of changes are you talking
No,
about?
the project, if we discover, something where we need to move the pipeline, for example, if we have to change the scope of the project.
Okay, that's what I said,
then
the
the
scope.
cost
Then
would-
they could cost.
Okay. And then what about the rules of the state? If those change, the state revolving fund somehow comes up with some different criteria, is that in this,
We would
causes
have an
change
agreement-
orders? Change orders
We would
are
have an
allowed?
agreement in place with the state once. So those rules are already predetermined, essentially. They're not going to change the
Right.
rules on us.
So we've had a lot of very candid conversations, if you will, I would say, with the state to talk about this issue. Because the first request from the district's side is, can you just write us a letter saying you're going to guarantee?
Right.
Well, obviously, they're not going to do that because they have to work through these processes.
But they say, we're we're from the government, we're here to help you.
Yeah, right. So they have, I would say between a 10 and 15 section checklist of these different departments that have to review this overall amended package and approve it. And so our next question was, well, have you, in your experience, have other water and wastewater purveyors decided to proceed with the understanding that, to use your analogy, Charles, you're kind of driving without insurance for a little bit of time there. And they said, yes, larger districts will proceed without having the agreement in place with the understanding that the person that we work with can foresee no issue associated with our current application.
This has always been a fantastic project. I mean,
Right.
you said 5 years, it seems like it's been longer than that we've been sitting here looking at this thing and trying to get our funding, our wastewater funding in balance so we can go after it.
Right.
And they were the ones that were, stymieing us.
Right.
It just seems like now that we're here, we waited this long to do it. I would just hate to see, the greatness about it is they're paying for everything. I mean, it's 100% funded by them. And I'd hate to see that not be able to happen, especially with, that's checking every box of their criteria.
And so then the other question was, okay, the funding agreement comes through within the next 4 to 6 months. All of the work up until that point can then be eligible for reimbursement, and the answer is yes, absolutely. It's just the signing on the dotted line is going to take 4 to 6 months.
So can I talk just a little bit? I want to make sure I understand. So we know that we have 4.75 approved to do the project. It came in at 8.8. So we have that difference that we're trying to get DWR, whoever we're getting a loan from, the grant from, to increase the grant, right? So the bid expires on the 28th, so we want to sign that now so we don't lose that cost and then move forward. We know we have access to the 4.75. If we start building, can we start requesting reimbursement? Because I imagine we pay up front, we get requests reimbursement back,
That's
right?
another issue also.
Okay, so let me finish with my following. So let's say we do get reimbursement. Well, wait, maybe you do need to answer that. So they're going to give you the money up front.
They have to, regardless, they have to go through a final budget approval that takes 4 to 6 months. So, and the time.
Yeah.
Really, the clock hasn't started yet on that. So
Right.
Well, and this time of the year, they won't even look at it until July 1 anyway.
So
The risk to us could be, we start moving forward, we have to pay for the project. We know we'll get 4.75, but the rest we could not get. And then where do we get it from? If they say we're not increasing it, where does that money come from?
Right,
So, and it's not in our budget right now.
And we will have already have started that project.
Yes.
That's designed by that company, which.
Well,
is
no,
not
they
a
didn't do
for-
the design, but there
No.
is, so at that point, the project would change.
No, the project's been designed. They're on the phone. They're on.
No, but the construction contract we're talking about is a different.
Right.
But the
But the
project at
project we're
that
going to
point,
start.
the scope of the project would change at that point. If we didn't
But-
have.
We
the
will already have
additional
started this
Why?
project that's already been designed. How could it, wait, is there,
That
is,
the risk basically that we're trying to mitigate and
Yeah.
explain how we're going to do that. So,
So
basically, we would have to manage the project at that point to try to, worst case scenario is we can't come to terms with KW Emerson on a path forward and we have to cancel the project. That's the absolute worst
and,
scenario.
and
Yeah,
then
but-
we've sunk, I don't
All
know,
this
two
money.
to
I don't
4
see-
million.
The
Well,
more
but-
likely scenario is we, okay, assuming we don't get that funding, then the more likely scenario is we sit down with KW Emerson and we work out a project that is more affordable for the district.
It
We
has to be,
already tried that.
has to
We
be
got that down
redesigned.
to 7.
has to be redesigned then too.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
So there'll be components of the project that will be eliminated or change based on the availability of funding.
So what is so bad about saying we're going to wait? And my reasoning for that is because of the way the economy is right now. Prices are really high. We're more than likely going to be going into a recession. So won't there be more people looking for jobs, right? Contractors? I mean, because if nobody can build houses anymore or do anything, but yet we're in a position if we wait 4 to 6 months to get the full funding. And I think when it goes out to a bid after we get that information and we're in this recession, I think you might have more contractors looking for jobs. Is that wrong? Looking for projects to build.
And be willing to drop the price.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Couple things to
I
consider.
don't see it going up.
But if it does go, but if it does go up, let's say it goes up to 12 million, we just go back to the state revolving fund.
Well, here's what I would say.
At that point,
Councilor
it's not to do
Biddick,
the same thing we just did.
you
I don't know if we, and
We'd be in the same situation again, we'd be like, okay. yeah.
but there is a,
we get
the
ahead of
way
that
you
90
develop
days.
your
We get ahead of that 90
RFP,
days.
you could just say, our max is 10 million. So if somebody wants to bid it as, we could do, and you have to do the same for everybody who's bidding it. You could say, okay, here's what we can do for 10. And if they want to charge more, maybe they are in line with $10 million, right? Because theirs is 8.8. I don't know why you asked for 9.9. But, you can just resubmit it and say, our max is 10 million. I don't generally like to tell contractors what our budget is, but in this case, it might be warranted. And just say bid it within these parameters and list what you can't get done if there is. So then at least you're looking at it, you're going, okay, we could live with that. Maybe you can't do a drawing bed or whatever, you know what I mean? We could get away without that. But there's options and I don't like when we're putting ourselves in a position where we're spending money we don't have yet, are the odds we get it pretty high? I would have to say yes.
It just seems like a gamble.
Right, and I
Well,
don't think
the-
we should be gambling.
But there are ways to mitigate the consequences and what that risk is. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we don't know if prices are going to be cheaper.
Right.
If we decide to rebid it. And then so we have a time frame with which we're required to complete this project. And the state has a time frame within which they're required to liquidate all the bond funds, the federal money that they've received.
Is this
Yeah,
Prop
so-
1 fund?
Yeah. So
They're not
there's a-
going anywhere. This is the DAC, right?
Yes.
The DAC,
but-
and you know, they have all this DAC funds that they're begging people.
Well,
We're one
so
of them.
exactly.
You know, so
bonds
they
will
have
go all
bonds.
the more reason to proceed, because if we move forward to the state and we say, we kind of held back in the summertime because we weren't sure about the certainty, and now we want to proceed, but it's $1 million more expensive, we might run afoul with the state in that
I
regard as
just
well.
feel like we're reacting like, oh my gosh, we got to do this. And I don't like that. I'd rather.
I just don't like the gamble. I mean, it's sitting in this chair, and you said something about your own money versus someone else's money
Yeah.
earlier. And that's kind of what we're doing here is, I wouldn't gamble $4 million of my money regardless of how, how I spend.
So-
Well, and if you can understand, I mean, staff's objective has been to secure the best price. KW Emerson is working on the filter, or additional filter at the West Point Water Plant also. So these would be the only 2 jobs that they're going to do for the foreseeable future. So in terms of coordinating with a contractor and securing the best price currently, this is probably the most efficient path forward. I mean, this is what we've identified. But totally
See
understand.
what Russ
I mean,
has
there
to
is a
say.
risk.
Let's see what Russ has.
That's the only thing that bugs
Right.
me.
Pipe in. What do
Project,
you
I
think?
love it.
Are you sure you want to hear what I'm going to say?
Yes, if you're
Yeah.
saying go forward, then okay.
This is a real thorny issue. All of us are very committed to acting responsibly here. And it conceivably, this particular situation could be one in which taking a little risk to get a lot of benefit might be justifiable. Or in my mind, it is justifiable. I agree with you, Cindy, that it feels odd having to make a decision with the clock running on a June 28th drop dead date on this contract, but that's not our fault and it's not Emerson's fault. They bid it 90 days ago. But I don't know. I think that we've had a pretty good or better than good relationship with Emerson over the past. I talked to Michael extensively earlier today about how confident he is in our relationship with Emerson. And I don't know, I would be very much in support of going along with the staff recommendation and getting this done, get the contract signed and get the work done so we can move on to something else.
Well, I like KW Emerson too. I think they're really good. That's not the issue with me. Let's hear what Bertha has to say.
And Bertha has to say that, no, I agree with Emerson, how long he has been with us or with CCWD. I don't anticipate a problem with the state coming through with the money. You know, let's not forget that it's a poor.
Attack.
No, what's the terminology? What's
Disadvantaged.
deprived or whatever?
Disadvantaged community.
Yeah. That is very important these days.
Well,
And so I don't anticipate a problem. And so I would say, yes.
okay. Okay, so we've heard from us. Let's hear what Mr. Meyer has to say real quick. And then if we get a motion, let's
I have a
take
couple
vote.
of quick points I'd like to
Okay.
make too.
I will give you my floor.
Thanks. So I just want to touch on a couple of points because the risk is one that we've talked a lot about because we're not a risk risk-taking agency, right? We're a public agency. We don't take big risks.
Right.
We're very cautious when it comes to risk, and that sometimes costs us money, but that's because we're not willing to lose. In this case, it's not just a matter of confidence in the contractor, it's confidence in, as Charles said, the way we're going to manage the project, so that even if the rest of the money doesn't come through, we're still going to get a project. It isn't going to be the project that we're hoping for and that was initially, the whole scope of the project that we've designed. But we're not going to just lose the money that we spend between now and the funding agreement. That will still end up with a project, just not quite the same project.
Would you have to make some kind of amendment to protect us with Emerson that
Yes.
says the max we can spend at this time is 4.75? So when we're reaching that point, we halt and there's no fees to us for canceling that kind,
Or terminate the contract if we can't
Right.
reach that agreement. And it may be at that point,
I feel more comfortable.
we do have that. And at that point, we could also do a cost benefit analysis, because maybe, we go back to the drawing board and it's 5.75 to get a
We
good
do
project
have
still.
that $4.7 million contract that
Regardless.
No,
we have an $8
if
million.
if that's what our funding is then capped at, we can evaluate whether or not it's worth it for the district to kick in any money in addition to that or not. But we could go back and terminate this contract.
Well, I want to
and
make sure it's in
arrive
writing
at a
with
new
them
one.
that we're
It would
okay
not
to
be
terminate.
ideal. It would definitely, we don't want to have to go there, as
No.
Charles said.
No, we
And I
don't, but
wouldn't expect us to have to go there, but we would have that option and we would still end up with a project, not. the
can
one
you
that we're
have
hoping
that
for.
in writing? Because I fear that this is what we're going to do. And then let's say it happens, we can only do 4.75 and they're going to sue us to fulfill the contract.
We have the right to terminate the contract.
You got that on the record. You hear that, Rebecca? Okay. Well, I'm okay with that then, Scott, if that's the case. If we spent 4.75, will we have something that's useful or just?
Yeah,
say,
well,
have we
that was
done
gonna be
project?
my question. If we're going to be changing, is it worth it to us?
Two of the ultimate objectives would still be completed. You would eliminate an open cesspool in Wilseyville and you would consolidate the two facilities.
Okay,
So,
so
I
that's,
mean,
yeah.
the
the
worst
other-
case, that's what you
At
would get.
a very
Uh-huh.
basic level.
The other-
And which is what we wanted to do to begin with, right?
Some of the other benefits of the project wouldn't come through that, but we would still
I'm
get a project that
okay.
meets those agreement, or that meets those objectives at least. Because I completely understand and appreciate the point about risk. We're not proposing a gamble here. The other point I want to make is on material costs, and I think that's another point that is obviously at the forefront of everybody's minds these days. But what we know is material costs have already gone up since in the 90 days that this contract was bid. And even if, and we hope not, I've never wished for a recession, but if the construction bidding environment changes in the next 6 months, we may see contractors willing to lower the profit margin that they'll take on projects,
Right.
but they're not going to have control over the material costs that are driving
Can't.
construction.
What about the
Yeah.
delivery problem with these?
Right, so
So is that still an issue?
that's something that's outside of the control of the contractor. So maybe they could trim some of the bid, but I would still expect to see a higher bid overall, not because the contractors are not motivated to get the project, but just because of the material costs and the delays that are associated with.
But we
supply
still
chain
have
constraints.
to flow some of these cash expenses, right? I mean.
Yeah, so there'll be
We
a
won't
cash flow
until
issue.
we're, okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, does anybody want to make a motion?
He stole my thunder.
You gave the floor to him.
Can I take
Go
it
ahead.
back? I just wanted to add, because he did cover most of the points that I mean. We are very conservative, you know that of me. And there is concern here, but there's also two things to keep in mind. This inflation is not demand driven, it's supply driven. The lack of supply is what's causing the increase in prices. It's not similar to prior inflationary areas. So it's the demand, the supply chain is broken. We all know that.
Right.
And the supply costs are going to keep going up, just like Michael said, just like Damon and Charles said. That's what we're facing with delays. Plus, on top of that, Charles, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the components they have to order is a screen. And that takes what, about 9 months?
Yeah.
At best. very long lead
How
time.
much do they require to order?
Well,
them?
please let me finish this process, my thought process here. And my apologies for
It's okay,
interrupting.
yeah.
We have the state gave us a deadline of the end of 2024. The state, the Prop 1 funds are similar to what we face when we issue debt. We have to use the funds by a certain date. And that they're telling us that it expires at the end of 2024. With all this lead time and all this work and everything, it's still going to be pushing to get it done in 2024, correct? And my concern is if we, and I know the risk, we're facing increasing costs and the end date of that money. I'd hate to lose out on any money, free money from the state.
Where's the deadline of the end of December 31st, 2024? Where does that come in?
That's on the Prop
One
1
funds? Shit, they've been,
Our representative didn't give me the actual date, so it might be a little bit further out into early 2025. That's the date I asked for. I said, can we have another 9 months to complete the project?
so that's within our contract with the state revolving fund.
That's what we've asked
Within our
for. Yeah,
agreement,
because
okay.
currently it was going to expire in like March 2023, or is that right? Yeah. Is that?
Yeah.
It seems like really close. Yeah, so we asked until December, like late of 2024, which give us a whole other construction season. And her response was, the bond Prop 1 funds have to be liquidated by a certain date. She thought that was still within the time frame, so that was going to be acceptable. But I didn't push her as far as, what's the actual liquidation date and their internal deadline.
So it's just making sure that those funds are available to the district.
Yeah.
And again, there's no such thing as free money, obviously.
Well,
But,
obviously there is.
well, we still have to, all the time and effort we're using to be able to meet the requirements and everything else, yes, it's a big plus. And this has been on the radar when I first started
Absolutely.
in 2008. And it's just, it's just
The
two more
biggest thing is
factors.
the thing that's been so attractive is this is 100% funding from day one. For the 6 or 7 years that we've been talking about this, that's
Mhm.
and to see that go away would,
be
at this point in time would be disappointing.
Right.
So
And that's the only thing.
my concern is if you have to adjust the scope of the work, and so you said ordering that screen would that screen be a necessary part of the scope of work if it's dropped to 4.75? Because if it's not, we do have to put out X amount, 10% for them to order, or whatever that is.
Part of the next.
So you guys have got to look at this, and we don't want to pay for anything that can't be part of a $4.75 million scope of work.
This is part of the next coordination. If the board approves this, this is the work that we would then do throughout this 4 to 6 months.
Because especially buying something like that, because they're a prefab thing that you put in,
Right.
and then we don't use it, but yet we put money there, that doesn't,
We
yeah.
wouldn't do that.
Okay.
We're confident that the money's going to come through. Like I said, when you evaluate these projects, we tick every box that the state uses to evaluate these projects.
I'm going to say, Matt, if we can't get out of the contract, you're in big trouble. And if we buy something that we can't use, you guys are in big trouble. Will that work?
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready for a motion, or Russ, do you have anything else?
Any public comment, any?
Well, hang,
Russ is gonna.
Okay,
Thank
if it pleases the president and the board, I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, okay.
I accept that motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, I'd like to move that we adopt resolution number 2022. What is, I don't know what the suffix is, but
67.
2022-67, accepting the bid submitted by KW Emerson Incorporated as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder for the West Point and Wilseyville wastewater treatment plant consolidation. Going on that we're authorizing the general manager to enter into a construction contract with KW Emerson in the amount of $8,573,362 for said project. And that's my motion.
And I'll second it.
All right, I think I asked for public comment already, but do we have any public comment online? I think we asked for it before we went back to more discussions. Seeing none? Okay, take a vote, please.
Okay. Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
I'll happily say yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
President Cicada.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck. Let's get it.
No, thank you, Dana. Thank you, Charles.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Your support and confidence in staff, and we'll definitely,
Did-
we're going to manage the heck out of this project, make sure it's going to go smoothly. So, thank you.
Okay.
We'll work on the state first.
Yeah.
Get-
Excuse me,
Yeah,
can I ask one last question?
No, no.
How will we, how will it get reported back to us? And what kind of progress or time period or whatever?
Carrier pigeon.
Yeah, we can give.
I
we
think
can
you
give
guys will
periodic
be
project
celebrating,
updates to
letting
the
us
engineering
know.
Committee and to the full board as the
Yeah.
project progresses, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, just as long as we, as long as we hear that, that's fine.
Actually, I do have one more question, Michael.
Not too late. No.
I
you're-
know.
you're the president.
And I think I'd asked this already, but do we have to pay all this up front and then get reimbursed at one time? Or is it progress?
No, I think
payments
we
with
can
them?
start getting reimbursement
Okay.
after the funding agreement's in place,
Okay.
right? We just can't- Yeah, we're just gonna have a
So you
longer,
guys will monitor when you're getting close to that 4.7.
right, we're just
line,
gonna have a
what you're
longer
gonna
lead
do.
time. Normally, it would be reimbursements, on a more regular basis.
Right.
We're gonna have, we're gonna have to work
You
on the
just may
cash
not
flow issue
be able
because it
to-
may be 6 or 8 months, right, before we get reimbursed.
Yeah.
And we've already had
Those
talk-
conversations happen with Jeff and the finance team also, is like, hey, we need to think about this pinch point potentially related to.
We wouldn't be doing like a bridge loan. We could use funds to hold us over for cash flow, correct? Well, you know what? Bring that, just give us an
Yeah,
update
we're
Most
good.
convenient,
at the
Mr.
next
Meyer.
couple of meetings or something where we stand.
Yeah, got it.
Oh, I'd hate to-
We'll keep you posted on
We're
that.
we're already out of pocket of design, right? I'm assuming they've been paid.
Right.
Yes.
All right, moving on. New business, I think we're on 5C, correct? Discussion action regarding credit adjustment for APN 008-022-009. Jessica, hello.
Hello again. So any credit adjustment that exceeds $1,000 must go to the board. So this is for the account that is located at 207 Matson Lane. This was a leak that has since been repaired. And the leak adjustment request is for $1,063.20.
Move for acceptance.
Second,
Any public comment? Russ?
No.
All right, seeing none, can we get a roll call vote?
Director
Fast.
Thomas,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
President Cicada.
Yes.
Good job.
Great presentation, Jessica. We really appreciate that. All right, approval of the fiscal year 2023 service area water supply and demand assessments. This should be another quick one. I think.
Yeah, good afternoon, directors. This is an example of a relatively new requirement that the Water Resources Department has to deal with in terms of putting together what are called the water supply and demand assessments per the California Water Code. Recall with last year when the board adopted the Urban Water Management Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan updates last June, that this was a new requirement imposed by the state for us each year to dive into our all 6 of our service areas, look at water supplies, look at the demands, see how they match up, and use that information to propose whether or not we need to implement shortage stages per our water shortage contingency plan. The actual procedures to put together the WSDAs were adopted as part of the water shortage contingency plan last year as well. We even came before you all adopted that document and did a sort of trial run just to illustrate what this might look like for our 6 service areas. At that time, recognizing we were going into the drought, we had recommended stage 1. Ultimately, with the governor's drought declaration last year, the board did adopt stage 1, and we've since moved into stage 2 with this year's executive order. Now, you'll notice in the attachments to the agenda item here that this year's format is a little more reorganized. We're looking more at some high-level supply and demand projections, looking more at where our water resources come from, what carryover volumes we have in some of our storage facilities, and to try and make the information a little more clear to folks who might review what we're now calling the Water Supply Projections Report. This is really to complement the WSDAs that we submit to the state and really dives into a snapshot of the current hydrologic condition. Where are we at with our carryover? What do our supply and demands look like? And what ultimately are we suggesting from the water shortage contingency plan? This is a report that I put together that actually contains a bunch of great information looking at what water year types typically follow others. What are we expecting? What are we currently in with precipitation indices? And really can provide a snapshot so that as we do this each year, we can go back and reference where were we at, what were our conditions, how well did we do at projecting out what our supplies and demands ultimately looked like given curtailments and everything else that might happen. At this point, between the report and the water supply and demand assessments, we are not recommending any shortage conditions. So in other words, our supplies do not warrant shortage conditions in any of our service areas. That said, when I analyzed the 6 of them and worked with Michael and operations staff and others to review to make sure the data was correct, we found that West Point is probably the closest in terms of there are some summer months, especially if we start to see curtailments where we're going to push a little close between the available supplies and our demands that we're projecting out based on prior year trends and what we're seeing for growth, et cetera, in that area. So even though we are not, exceeding our available supplies, we're getting close enough that we point out that the supply buffer, as we're calling it, is tight there. Now, of course, earlier in the meeting today, you all approved the supplemental purchase agreement from Shad's Reservoir. We project out that if curtailments hit the way we fear we might on our Bear Creek rights, that we may end up with around 171 of the 200 acre feet purchased. So still a little bit of room in there too if needed. It's worth noting we are constrained by the intake rate from our Middle Fork pumping plant. So if we do, we'll continue to monitor those conditions and bring back to the board if we begin to see any trouble on the West Point system. The other one worth mentioning is that even though we have White Pines Lake for Sheep Ranch on San Antonio Creek, and we do have enough carryover storage in White Pines to provide that supply for Sheep Ranch downstream. We do know that historically with droughts, there have been conditions where San Antonio Creek runs nearly dry, even though we are releasing from White Pines. So we'll need to continue to monitor that. Of course, this is partially an accounting exercise between what we have available under our rights, but then there also is the physical release of water to make sure we're getting the correct volume down to the intake at the FRECO diversion. And then, of course, we've got the whole rite of passage connection of what they take off the diversion, what we take, making sure that we are using our White Pines Lake water and are working with them to hopefully so that they're not taking our stored water releases. That being said, we may have in normal conditions recommended, level 1 voluntary actions given some of this information. But as you all know, with the executive order that we saw in late March, we were forced to move into stage 2 anyway. And so you all adopted that in the last meeting, and we will continue to go forward with that information. But again, this provides a good snapshot of where we're at in time. It fulfills the water supply and demand assessment requirement for the state and provides a solid overview that we'll continue to update annually to make sure that we continue to stay, in the green, so to speak, in terms of available water supplies and our projected demands for most of our service areas. So if there are any questions on
I
that.
just want to say, I look at all these reports you do and stuff. So I want to say that CCWD is very lucky to have you. You do a great job in all these, and I just couldn't imagine doing all that. So thank you.
It does look like a lot of work. You probably
It
should get an
does.
assistant.
Well, I appreciate that. And yes, a lot of work went into it because, again, I want to make sure that we stay on top of it. We're very fortunate compared to other districts that we have the access to stored water supplies. And well, I thank you. But I want to make sure that we stay in a good position that way.
I haven't heard the term rite of passage in a long time.
Yes, that's it's been Madonna of Peace, Rite of Passage. I think they even had another name at one point, Damon. It was like the state's boys school or something up there, the training center. Yeah, they've gone through a few different name changes.
It was FRECO Boys Club.
that's what it
Yeah, that's what the town's called. That's what it was.
But
70s.
as far as their take is concerned, that was what I was speaking in terms of, do we have?
I think it's right.
Yeah, so to clarify with Rite of Passage, we both utilize the FRECO ditch diversion. We have an agreement with them where it's essentially a maintenance for us to be able to wheel our water through part of the facilities to get to Sheep Ranch. There's a turnout there, and then they use their water and continue it on towards their facility located downstream. Now, being that we each pull our water rights from the Freco diversion, we have the water rights that we use to fill White Pines Lake that we released pull through there. They have a separate pre-14 claim to San Antonio Creek diversions that they pull through there. That's a little tricky in how that's
So,
worked in the
yeah, I
past.
could see that.
And that's taken me quite a bit to try and unwind
Uh-huh.
some of that. At this point, given the curtailment orders we have seen from the state, realistically, rite of passage is curtailed. They should not be diverting anymore. We fortunately have our White Pines Lake storage, so we can't divert new water, but we can release previously stored water. So this is where I was referring earlier to the fact that the water we're releasing and is available in San Antonio Creek realistically should only be ours. How we work that out with rite of passage, obviously, we don't want to cut them off. We want to be good neighbors and work with other suppliers, but we need to come to an agreement on how exactly we operate White Pines and get credit reimbursed for some of our O&M, perhaps even for that, if we are in fact providing them stored water. So more to follow on some of that, but it is a tricky system where it's at currently, and an old system, unfortunately, as I'm sure Damon and operations can attest.
And so how's dialogue going?
We could charge them $150 per acre foot is what we should be doing.
Pass through some of them. Yeah, at this point, I think they're plenty busy trying to figure out their own water supply situation. We're working internally to figure out what to propose to them that would be reasonable and neighborly. And so I think, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but plan to work with them soon here to try and figure out how to resolve some of this issue.
Yeah, and I think it feeds into, we were talking recently, Director Underhill, there's an effort underway that we've talked about in the past to do sort of a master planning assessment of the water supply for Sheep Ranch and what our options are going forward, because we know the current infrastructure is not a long-term solution for the district. So we're in the process working with an engineering firm of evaluating those options. They're nearly complete, and we've been really impressed with their work. So it is a complex set of issues, even though it's our smallest water system. And so it is probably something we'll discuss with the board about potentially a separate workshop dedicated to that issue, or at least a very light board agenda, because I think it's going to take some time to really work through those issues and come up with an analysis or pursue which option we should pursue, and then also the other stakeholder outreach that we're going to have to do is associated with that, because there will be a lot of that. So that effort's underway right now. Part of that will include rite of passage, how we, renegotiate that agreement. There's other, I know folks in Mineral Mountain right now are on, I think, 2 hours of water a day.
Yeah.
Is all they can use, and, or something along those lines.
And I think we've been at that point before, haven't
Where
we?
is that?
Yes, yes.
Mineral Mountain's a
Timber
small
trails
subdivision
towards
up
Sheep
there. Yeah, I think maybe around 30 houses or so.
Or Sheep Ranch from where?
So kind of along more or less Avery Sheep Ranch Road, kind of
Oh,
that
okay.
towards
Yeah.
Sheep Ranch, more or less.
So there's some other water supply issues regionally that we're trying to take a comprehensive approach to the issue. And that's why it's, required the use of an outside engineering firm, and it'll require some dedicated time, I think, to work through those options.
All right, you have questions?
Well, of course, we don't
understand-
want any change.
Well, I think operations staff would probably disagree with that statement.
Yeah, it's a really.
The current infrastructure is not, is very precarious.
All right, let's get to Scott. and then the rest.
On, in a staff report, Brad, on page 2, you indicate that all those stored waters being depleted, the available supplies and contractual rights remain adequate for CCWD to meet its water service demand in the current and in subsequent years. If the drought, how many subsequent years if this drought persists just like it's going right now? What is that?
Yeah, great question. And obviously it depends on the service area. You get a snapshot of that in the water supply and demand projections report, where I put together what's called a multiplier, essentially to look at our carryover storage as well as what the projected demands are for a year. What we find currently is that each one of them are clearly safe between around 3 years, if not more than that, if we continue.
Okay.
For some of the larger systems like New Spicer having such a large facility up there, obviously there's going to be some push and pull between us and NCPA if this persists much beyond 3 years. But ultimately, the contract is clear that we have the first right for our consumptive demands.
Our worst case scenarios in our most depleted systems, 3 years.
Our worst case scenario is probably about 2 years. Sheep Ranch being White Pines, that
Right.
one, as well as West Point, depending on, well, less so with the CPUD agreement, but
Well, that's
just looking at,
And then my-
but for the most part, our bigger systems, Jenny, Ebbets, Copper, are looking beyond 3+ years. Yeah.
okay. And then my last question, on the next paragraph after that, you talk about the West Point area being solely reliant on supplemental water supply purchases. That's what we just negotiated with CPUD.
That's CPUD, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And we're gonna be a lot more reliant on that in the future if the drought persists.
Yeah, so a couple ways to clarify that is let's give an example of last year with the drought. We purchased around 93 acre feet. This year, if curtailments really go sideways on us, on our rights, we could be looking at that 170 plus projection, just based on the fact that even if the water is available in Bear Creek, we can't divert it given the curtailment orders. What we're seeing right now is we're in a better position right now with Bear Creek having that year to really analyze our water supplies. We really were able to nail down the pre-14 claim basis for our water rights on Bear Creek, which pushed up that priority year beyond some of the initial curtailment orders. So it really put us in better shape, but not completely invulnerable to some of the orders that we're already seeing on the Calaveras River, for instance, where everything's curtailed. Pre-14 post doesn't matter.
So 171 is what we're anticipating this year, but
As a
we're-
max. Yep.
The MAC, okay, and the minimum per contract is 40.
Yep.
Okay. All right,
So somewhere between $6,000 and $25,000.
I'm done.
All right, Russ, your turn.
I don't have anything to say, but I just want to point out that Ralph Copeland has had his hand up to make a public
Oh,
comment.
very good. All right, well, we're done with the board members. So any public comment, that would be Ralph?
Hey, how you guys doing again? Thank you,
We're
Brad.
hanging in.
Thank you, Brad, for putting together another wonderful report. And as I've said in the past, you guys have a wonderful team. I'm just following up on the extra storage that you had asked the feds for at New Maloney's for us here at Lake Tulloch. I was wondering how that's coming along.
Yeah, that, Mike, I'll look at you. That might warrant its own agenda item here, but
Yeah, we probably should agendize that and bring it back at some point. But briefly, Ralph, I can tell you, it's been a painfully, frustratingly slow series of discussions with Bureau of Reclamation on that point. And it's really kind of held up on what the basis of the source of supply that we would use to fill the storage pool is, and some larger issues that the Bureau is dealing with water agencies throughout the state that come into play, that we've tried to get them to focus just on our effort, which doesn't necessarily have to solve all those larger issues, but they're really reluctant to touch it until they've kind of resolved a broader set of issues that are way more complicated than it needs to be for our particular project. So sorry if that's kind of a vague answer, but we have been pursuing those discussions on a regular basis with the Bureau of Reclamation, and we'll continue to do so. But just to make sure we set expectations for when we do bring this back, it has been painfully slow progress.
Michael, do you think we could, tentatively say, let's bring it back the first meeting in August for some kind
Sure.
of discussion? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Ralph, we'll put that on for the first meeting in August if you want to make sure you're part of the discussion.
And this
Okay.
item, I'll go ahead with a
Yep, sounds
motion.
good.
My minute entry to acknowledge and approve the findings of CCWD's fiscal year 2023 water supply and demand assessment and water supply projection report.
Second?
All right. Roll call vote, please. We already did public comment. That was the only one.
Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
President Cicada.
Yes.
If I could just point out one thing, at the risk of inflating Brad's ego, because he's already been praised here. He briefly touched on something that I feel like we should recognize was a really significant effort to shift the reliance on our Bear Creek water right to a pre-14 water right that
Nice.
Brad did a tremendous amount of work to research and develop the basis behind that right, and it puts us in a much better position going forward. And it's been reviewed and vetted by other interested parties at this point, and it was really significant, really great work effort. So Brian skimmed over it at a very high level, but I wanted to make sure we capture that because it's something that will benefit the district for forever.
He's so
going forward.
modest and humble.
Well, thank you. And you might have seen me over the last year, not only in our library here, but even at the courthouse, digging through old court documents, trying to follow the pathway of who owned this water right to Bear Creek, how it followed through, what the miners' inches were. I learned a lot about that old term, following through from the mid 1800s all the way to today through the West Point Ditch Company and everything else. I can show you old newspaper snippets I've found in archives that point to our ditch system that we currently use in West Point. And a lot of that was proving out the priority date, so it protects us as the state does their curtailment thing.
And that's so hard to find that old information. I mean,
It's really hard.
finding an old easement based on a legal description.
I know the two lawyers here will appreciate this, but old contracts were terribly written
Yes,
But in nice cursive though.
in a nice curse.
and on onion paper, right? You know that clear paper,
Yep.
remember that?
Like-
All right, thank you, Brad.
No problem.
So it
Thank you.
looks like you
Yeah.
did a great
Well,
job again.
May I say again, how much we appreciate the knowledge that
I know.
this gentleman brought to CCWD is just amazing to me. It's just,
Good job.
where
I
you were
appreciate all the
born and where
compliments,
you were
absolutely.
raised and ending up here at CCWD is just.
We could talk about Exonia,
Where were you
Wisconsin if you want.
All right, let's move on to GM.
Before
Oh.
Brad goes too far away, I just want to make sure that he's got enough money in his water resources budget to cover all of the paper and ink that he's using.
Yeah. All right,
We'll have to
Michael.
revisit that. Yeah, I just have some quick items. The engineering committee meeting I referenced briefly, good discussions on Thursday. And one of the outcomes, so there were a lot of different items that we discussed. One of them was the commercial meter policy item. We developed, or we came up with at a high level, some policy options to provide some flexibility for customers. And the direction from the committee was to, before drafting any policy or doing any of the intensive work that will go into that, bringing it back to the board at the first meeting in July to get a thumbs up from the full board on the direction that we've, that we, as we understood it. So we'll kind of, I think what our approach is at this point is we're already working on what those concepts are, present those to the board on, is it the 13th?
13th, yeah.
And then as long as there's a thumbs up, I'm sure get some more input on as to which direction to go with those policies. Then we'll get them, we'll take it to the next step.
And this is kind of in response and setting up a temporary change to the ordinance until you get a full dive into it, or?
Well, actually, I think part of the effort we really want to focus in on is what can we change in the short term that doesn't create any Prop 218 implications or rate structure implications.
So you are looking
where
for
can
a
we build-
solution sooner than
Right.
later, or at least for
Exactly.
today.
So where
purposes,
is that
and then
flexibility?
the rate
that-
study. Nice, I like that.
So we'll bring those options back.
And who is working with you on that?
Who is working with me on
Who's
this?
working
you
on
on
that
that.
task? On the policy?
On, you mean among CCWD staff?
Yeah.
That is a multi-departmental effort. So up until now, I think Damon and engineering have taken the lead in terms of the research that's gone in. A lot of work's gone into that. But I think going forward, we need to bring in finance and customer service, other departments to make sure we're capturing everything that needs to be captured. And so, it's multiple departments, but really Damon and Jessica are taking the lead on it, and we're going to bring in everybody that needs to be
Okay.
involved.
Just quickly about the engineering department, of course, I wasn't able to say anything, but I was listening to your engineering meeting, and I was very impressed with how quickly and how concisely the issues were discussed. It was a no-nonsense kind of meeting. I was very, very impressed with that.
Yeah, I thought it was good discussion.
It was good discussion, and I just, I respect, and I was listening to that meeting as well, and I heard a lot of the reasons why we don't do something, and I hope with whatever you bring back at that next meeting, there is some solutions, whether it be temporary, just trying to make things work.
Mhm.
Okay, next.
I already made the announcement about our new Director of Administrative Services. I spent the last few days, Sunday through yesterday at the CSDA GM Leadership Summit. Really good program, and brought back some materials for myself and for staff to kind of incorporate into our work going forward. Saw some of our neighboring agency friends down there. And yeah, it was great. Very, very worthwhile. It's kind of like group therapy for GMs.
I've been to that one. I went to the one in Squaw
It's
Valley,
great.
and they are great source of information.
The only other thing I was gonna talk about, I said I wasn't going to, and then I did steal Director Radaman's thunder about the Mountain Counties tour coming up, so I'm not going to do that this time. But I do want to talk about Mountain Counties a little bit because I've had some discussions with Justin over the last couple of weeks about the AB 1717, if you recall. That's the one that would subject all forest management projects and fuel thinning projects to prevailing wage. That this board took an opposition position to. There was a very robust, lively discussion about this bill again at the Aqua State Legislative Committee meeting, and I think somewhat disappointing that the committee decided to remove Aqua's opposition to the bill and just go to a neutral position for political reasons. And it has to do with getting labor union support for dam safety funding. And that was sort of the political calculation that I think a lot of agencies were making. But that's a different calculation for mountain counties. And so Justin's been really receptive to that discussion about whether mountain counties can engage in that discussion and take the more vocal opposition position. And so appreciate Justin's time on that, and I look forward to. I think he's moving mountain counties in a direction of taking on more advocacy. And I think Aqua has a challenge of being such a big tent that it can be hard sometimes to find consensus on issues that really matter to us, and that's where mountain counties can, I think, be really valuable. So we'll keep you posted on that effort. And
That's it.
that's it.
Thank you. All right, let's start with Russ. Russ, any reports or information or future agenda items?
Just I'd like to report that looking at the temperature of 103 degrees here in Phoenix, but it's nice and comfortable in my room, and
It's dry.
nice try. But anyway, I'm very pleased that the technology exists to allow me to participate in these meetings. I will see you again on the 13th.
Well, we're glad you're here with us, Russ. In video only, but
Yep.
All right, Bertha.
Oh, yes. I ran across this one mission statement for the Highway 4 Calaveras water.
That's old.
Yeah, that's an old one. What,
We're not doing.
we merged into Calaveras Conserves, right?
We didn't
Interesting.
do
Yeah.
anything, but with COVID and such a
Yeah.
Well,
hard.
and we're over, well, we're not over COVID because excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, so that evolved over time. We did an event, was that pre-COVID?
That was the first and only one that was pre-COVID where we're going to go to each you know,
Right.
to do it. And I think CCWD hosted the
Yeah,
first
Steve
one. And
Walensky came and gave a
MSD
talk.
was going to do the next one and COVID hit.
And then I think it's kind of dropped
And
off, but you're
we-
right. All those same agencies and then a few more are
Yeah.
involved in Calaveras Conserves. Several of them are also participants in our quarterly utilities coordination meeting.
Yeah.
I think we probably have those
We-
bases
the
covered.
coverage. and
Yeah.
I enjoy the utility meetings. Those to me seem to be
Yeah.
way more informative. We wanted Highway 4 to do so, but it just,
Right, but I think, Blue Lake Springs, Angels, UPUD, they all participate in various ways in those discussions with us.
Well,
And
and,
MSD, and so
yeah, I
think
would
we
just
have
like to
covered.
hear about some of the,
Well, that group hasn't
we
met
haven't met since
since
right when
pre-pandemic.
COVID hit. So a
okay,
couple
all
of
right,
years.
so that's where that's at.
It's kind of sort of dissolved until somebody wants to step up, and I'm retiring, so I'm not doing it.
Okay, we do have a statewide Save Our Water campaign.
Mhm.
Do we use it?
Yes.
Yes. We absolutely-
Now walk back.
Thank you, Jessica.
We absolutely do. They have many different outreach materials and in everything that I post through our website and also through press releases. I always direct customers to Save Our Water because they have great tools and tips. They also provide us with outreach materials for all water
Right.
agencies to use and recycle because they have a whole staff who's dedicated to that. So yes, we absolutely use Save Our Water and they're great.
Okay, and we can, go to saveourwater.org.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. The last thing I have is the discussion regarding draft legislative advocacy policy.
Yeah.
And when will that?
Good question. So we had a discussion about it with the Legal Affairs Committee last week,
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. So I would expect probably bringing that back to the board next month at some point. I'm not sure which meeting, but does that sound right, Director Admin? We'll bring back a policy
Yeah, I don't
roughly.
think there's a big, huge rush on it, but yeah,
Yeah.
sometime in the near future.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we had a good discussion about, we've had the board take positions on
Right.
legislation before, but there's no clear definition of exactly what those positions, how we go through that process, and then also what does that mean for staff? What are the follow-up actions once those positions are taken? So I think it'll be helpful clarification.
Mhm. Because we hear, policies being advocated, but how we are going to react to them is a
Yeah.
big issue.
I think it'll help structure that discussion. It'll be a little bit more.
Okay, well, I
methodical.
look forward
Sounds
to
good.
hearing
Yeah.
from Director Adamman.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not, you will be hearing from me about it. Staff's putting together a recommendation on, we just need a policy. Is what you're
Actually, this
doing.
is all
Yeah.
Director Ratterman.
No.
He's the one driving it. So it's a great idea.
Good.
Yeah, I'm
policy,
working hard on
right?
it at home. I'll get it submitted soon.
Okay,
All right, or Scott, your turn.
Just on a future agenda item, we did talk about in the budget process in our last meeting, we talked about and divided up the two issues of hiring and approving money for positions. And I just want to make sure we could bring that back and create a policy that does that. For the same reason that when we include items for construction, $7 million, we're not approving $7 million in construction projects by approving the budget. And I want to
Right.
have a similar policy for, or have a discussion and see if we can create a similar
So
policy.
make that agenda item for us.
And
about
again, I don't
discussing
think,
a couple of new policies regarding hiring and
and again, I don't think
CIP
time,
is kind of a thing.
time is of the essence. I didn't say anything about CIP. I don't know what that's about.
What you
but-
just said for construction projects.
Oh, no, nothing about construction projects. It's similar to what we already have for construction projects.
All right,
Just
whatever you
dividing
said
up
then, Michael.
the budget. Michael knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And-
Dividing up in the budget process, I think historically when we approve, which I just found out and just realized at the last meeting, that when we approve money in the budget, we're approving also to go ahead and post the position and hire. And I want to divide those.
It's only if there's a change to the personnel allocation.
Right, so when there is a change in the personnel allocation, that we bring that up separately and not part of the budget process.
That's the policy you're
Yeah,
looking
that's the
for.
policy I'm looking for.
Okay.
Or at
We
least
can-
discuss.
And I
I can
agree
bring the
with that.
discussion back.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At least bring the discussion back.
Nice.
And one thing that we kind of glossed over in our consent agenda was Mia's contract. I just want to point out that how much hard work, how much successful work, she's worked for a long, long time. We got $1 million. We got the appropriation approved raised from 3 million to 13. She's done so many things, good things for us. And I think there was a write-up in our consent agenda, but it was just kind of, it wasn't mentioned I just want to make sure that she certainly deserves what raises that we're giving her. She's been held at the same rate for the last 3 years. And so we just approved a stair step raise for her. And in future things coming up here, I attended the Aqua JPIA property meeting this last week, and we approved a 20% increase in property premiums. That's not as much as what is in residential in this area. Residential policies in this area are going up by a lot more, or just being canceled. And so this is something that I think it was absolutely important. I mean, absolutely imperative that we do, and just to cover the expenses of the JPIA. It's coming, a bigger bill in the future. Mountain Counties, thanks, Michael, for it starts tonight. The tour is tomorrow, whereas a reception in El Dorado Hills tonight actually starts at 5. And we got an all-day tour tomorrow, and then a meeting and presentation afterwards. And then our Mountain County board meeting will be on Friday morning before we head out of El Dorado Hills. And lastly, I got a couple Aqua local government committee meetings scheduled for next week. Just be attending via Zoom.
And you thought you were in retirement. Oh,
Keep me off the streets.
I like it. I look forward to it. All right, is that it?
Yes.
All right, so for me, I want to, Damon, did you see my email from MSD me? Murphy Sanitary is participating in a SARS-CoV wastewater biosolids testing. And I sent Damon the email, and perhaps you guys will join with us. We talked briefly. And so we'll be starting that program. Hopefully CCWD will too, because CCWD covers more of the area. And we're also going to be reaching out to the county. I tried, but didn't get any response. But I'm going to call directly to the health department, and I might get a gentleman, his name, Brent, to help me work on some kind of a letter. I'm going to reach out to the health department first to let them know we're participating in this, and I hope CCWD does, and that they should be looking at the results to see if it's anything they want to use and sort of participate, but we'll see. MSD is doing it regardless. You can do $200 a sample, get reimbursed for doing this, up to 3 samples a week. It's $200 for if you actually pull biosolids. I think it's $150 if you do liquid only.
And where
We're
does
going
that
to do
come
that
from?
for a year. It goes to a study by Stanford to see how much or how COVID is affecting what's going through their treatment plants and whatnot. And they're going to post the information of what is found on a website for all the public to see. What happens with that information, how people can utilize it, I don't know. I'm told that you can see it in the waste, like 10 days before you get, so do you want to use it for some kind of an outbreak? I mean, looking at just MSD, we're quite the tourist town. So I don't know how accurate, but like with CCWD having all the areas, those could focus more on county-wide, how it's affected. But it's like if we're doing this, I know the study wants to, they have their goals from it, but does our county want to do something with it? I could see some potential funding somehow if they see that we have so much, maybe somehow that could release funding for What, I don't know, but anyhow, so that's going on and, I'm sure you'll check in with me and let me know if you're going to participate or not. And so that's that. And I've been making notes through our meeting, Michael. So for next meeting, or I would say July, something that I keep asking about and I really want to see is that employee appreciation party with the rebate, maybe you're going to do that
Yeah.
75th anniversary, but I
Oh,
really
yeah.
want to focus on the employees for this. And I'm looking forward to do more face-to-face because I don't know, half the employees. So I'd really like to see
So
that.
thank you for bringing that
scheduled.
up. I forgot to mention it in my
Oh, you have it scheduled?
reports, but I think what we're tentatively planning on is July
14th.
14th. July 14th, where we're going to bring back some things that we used to do for staff. And then in the afternoon, have a like a picnic.
I have a board meeting that day. and
Well, it
want
would,
to
I
be
don't know
there.
that we would do a board meeting, but we can invite.
No, I'm
the
saying
board.
I have a board meeting.
Oh, it'd be in the
So-
afternoon.
Okay. I want to make sure I want to meet everybody because I don't know these folks. And so are you thinking employee appreciation by itself and then doing it like here, or are you going to mix?
No,
it
we were thinking of doing it at White Pines.
Oh, nice.
On the afternoon of the 14th, which I know
And that's a
Director Radman
Thursday.
would
You
not
didn't-
be able to go.
You wouldn't want to do like a Friday instead? Is there a reason why it was a Thursday and
So
can the employees?
Friday can
attend?
be hard because not everybody works on Friday.
Okay.
So Wednesdays or Thursdays are usually the days where we can guarantee the most participation. So
Okay.
that's why we were
So
targeting.
July
he's saying-
14th, I'm going to put that on my calendar and that's soon. That's in 2 weeks or so.
Yeah. Noon to 4.
I don't know that it would be that long.
I got something else going on the 14th, I imagine. What is it? I'm sorry, I don't want you to. work
Stacy's
around
on the
me.
line, but I believe she's putting together the flyer, but I believe it would start around 12:30.
12:30.
Yes.
To
Or
4 or 5.
Yeah. For the
isn't there
board,
multiple components of
Correct.
it though? So the part
for
that
the board and
starts at
12:30.
12:30.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
that's earlier. than I
12:30.
thought.
If
You
that
guys are
works.
pushing that for me, but I will make it happen.
We can make it one. Because we have
No,
some other stuff
12:30
going
is
on.
okay,
so
I'll
We may
just,
need that extra time anyways. But anyways, we'll confirm.
Yeah, no, that's important.
Unless Director Radman, do you want to
No, that's
be there?
fine.
We can
I'm
reschedule.
not gonna be able to make it. I won't be in town that day, but
We can push it out if you'd like.
Push it out.
We'll take pictures. We'll take
No,
pictures.
I want everybody to be there. I mean, you guys have been around a lot longer than me. I just really want to, and I really do want name tags, you guys, because I won't remember everybody. They only have to remember me. I have to remember 68, 70 people. I know that sounds weird, but you're not going to be there?
no, actually, it's one thing I didn't report on. I'm, as part of the Federal Affairs Committee in Aqua, I'm attending the Aqua DC conference. So I will be in DC that day.
And isn't there somebody else doing that with you, like Jeff?
I don't think Jeff.
No,
He's
I don't
not
think-
on that committee anymore?
He was never on there. So this is Aqua's DC conference, which is
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm
different
thinking
than the
something.
Yeah, not-
legislative
we have federal
advocacy.
affairs.
Thing, gotcha.
Federal
Yeah,
Affairs,
so- We've sent representatives to that event in the past, in addition to the separate advocacy trips that we do. But this time, I think for the Aqua DC conference, it'll probably just be
Just be
Director
fun.
Retterman, and we may do another follow-up trip in the fall.
Well, do you want to be part of this?
No, I'm not going to make a special request that you'd include a date. Have it on July 14th, and it sounds like it's already, the planning has already started, and I don't want to interrupt that.
Okay.
There's a chance that it could be in, you
That's
plan on
okay.
the next day, I might be busy the next.
Yeah, you've been around long enough, Dale. Okay, so thank you. That's awesome. We'll get that scheduled. The other thing I noted was Russ wants to bring back some discussion or updates regarding red diesel.
Mhm.
And if you can't do it like the next meeting, at least a meeting in July, maybe the second meeting in July or something. From that engineering committee meeting, it sounds like one of the commercial customers are going to maybe do a variance. So what I'm thinking is, will you put it on this agenda, the next meeting, to have this so we can discuss it? And if she ends up not putting one in, then okay. But I want you to make sure it's agendized so we can address that, because I'd like to see something, even if it's just a temporary thing until, we get it, and put it after whatever the discussion is of a potential policy, because maybe it wouldn't be needed if the policy,
Right.
I mean, I don't know
We'll
what's
reach
all
out
going to be
and
asked,
coordinate
but
that with
will you
them.
just make sure that that's on the agenda? And
We'll
regarding,
reach out with the property owner and make sure, they're in the loop in terms of what our process is, and if they want to submit the appeal prior to the board meeting, that they have enough
okay,
time to do.
but
that.
I want to make sure if they do, you have it on that
Right.
meeting. I don't
Right.
want them to wait anymore. Okay, and then, the additional storage discussion for the Tulloch Lake, that's at some point in August, I think we said.
New Maloney's,
New
yeah.
Maloney's. And, I think that's it. Thank you.
I have another thing. You can go on vacation next week.
I was going to mention that. I forgot to remind folks that I will be on vacation next week. Thank you, Director Underhill. I was waiting for that blessing before I made any final plans.
Authorization has been approved.
All right, no other comments. So the next board meetings is Wednesday, July 13th and Wednesday, July 27th. Should have said R. There is no reportable action from closed session. So we'll just ignore that. And if there's nothing else, we'll adjourn the meeting.
Great.
At 3:34-ish.
You didn't get the record, Cindy, but that's